My sister wanted his ring. I already had his bloodline. This is my story. I didn't mean to watch him arrive, but the house has a way of pulling you toward the front windows when something is about to ruin your life. I stood half hidden behind the sheer curtain in my mother's sitting room, fingers pressed to the cool glass, and watched the black cars roll up the drive like a funeral procession, glossy, silent, inevitable. The Greco convoy didn't honk, didn't hesitate. It claimed the gravel the way men like Luciano Greco claimed everything else, without asking. My sister Sophia floated behind me in a soft rush of perfume and practiced breath. The whole morning she'd been all flutter and fever, hair curled, nails perfect, mouth curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "He's early," she whispered, like it was romantic. Early. Like an appointment. Like a sentence. The front doors opened before anyone reached for the handle. That was the first thing that made my stomach turn. Not the cars, not the men in dark suits stepping out with hands near their jackets, not even the weight of the family's expectation pressing on my spine. It was the way the house itself seemed to understand who was coming and surrendered. Then he stepped out of the lead car. Luciano Greco didn't walk. He arrived. Broad shoulders beneath a tailored coat, dark hair neat in the kind of way that looked effortless until you realized someone had probably rehearsed perfection for him. His face was carved in sharp lines, the kind of beauty that didn't invite you to touch it. It warned you not to. Even from behind glass, I felt him, like a shift in air pressure, like the second before lightning hits. He paused at the bottom of the steps and looked up, not at the door, at the window, at me. My hand jerked away from the glass so fast it left a fog print where my palm had been. I stepped back, breath caught in my throat, heart pounding hard enough I worried it would beat through my ribs and out into the room like a confession. Sophia laughed softly. "He's stunning." I didn't answer, because my body did, quietly, traitorously. A small twist low in my belly, a pulse of awareness that wasn't attraction in the innocent sense. It was memory. It was consequence. It was the private horror of knowing that the man who had come to marry my sister was also the reason I'd been waking up nauseous and dizzy for 2 weeks. The reason my favorite tea smelled like rot. The reason the calendar felt like a countdown. The reason I couldn't look at my own reflection without thinking, "You did this." My mother called from the foyer, sharp and excited. "Girls, now! Lena, come help your sister." Her voice hit my name like a reprimand, as if I'd already failed at something. I wasn't supposed to be in the sitting room. I wasn't supposed to be near the front. I wasn't supposed to see him first. Because first looks mattered. First looks were currency in our world, and my sister was the one being bought. Sophia brushed past me, her skirt whispering, chin lifted. She always knew exactly where to put herself in a room to be the brightest thing in it. I followed because I was supposed to. Because in my family, supposed to was a leash. We reached the foyer as the front doors opened wide. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and expensive cologne and something darker. Metal and smoke, like a gun cleaned too close to morning coffee. 2 Greco men entered first, scanning corners, eyes fast and flat. Then Luciano stepped through. The space changed around him. Our foyer had always felt large to me. High ceilings, marble floor, gilded mirror that made everything look more elegant than it was. With him in it, it felt smaller, like the walls leaned in to hear what he would say. He took off his gloves with slow precision. Not because it was cold, because it made people wait, because he liked control in small gestures. His eyes found Sophia, and then for one beat too long, they slid to me. Not any accident, a deliberate assessment. I wanted to drop my gaze. I didn't know why. Pride, maybe, or panic, or the stubborn, stupid part of me that refused to be erased while my sister got crowned. His mouth didn't smile, but something shifted in the edge of his expression. Recognition, so faint anyone else would miss it. I didn't. My pulse stuttered. My mother swept forward, all warmth and charm, as if she'd never once screamed at me for crying too loudly. "Mr. Greco, welcome to our home." Luciano's gaze remained on Sophia as he took my mother's hand and kissed the air above her knuckles. "Signora De Santis." His voice was low, smooth, the kind of sound that didn't rise. It sank. It made you lean in without meaning to. Sophia stepped forward, breath perfect, smile luminous. "Luciano." No title, a show of intimacy. He looked at her like he was deciding where she fit on a chessboard, then he nodded. "Sophia." He said her name like a promise and a warning at once. My sister's smile brightened, triumphant. She reached for his arm. Luciano didn't offer it. He didn't stop her either. He simply let her fingers rest there as if it didn't matter. As if she didn't matter. I saw the flicker in Sophia's eyes, so quick it would never make it into her version of the story. Then my mother turned, and this is Lena. My name dropped into the air like a coin into a well. Luciano's gaze cut to me fully this time, sharp and heavy. A silence stretched. Lena, he repeated, almost softly. The way he said it made my stomach drop. Because it wasn't new on his tongue. He knew how it tasted. My skin prickled. Sophia's fingers tightened on his sleeve. I forced my mouth into the kind of smile women like me learned early. Polite, controlled, non-threatening. Welcome. Luciano took a step closer. One step. That was all. But it narrowed the world until there was only him and the space between us, thick with things unsaid. He lowered his voice, just enough that it felt private, even in a room full of people. You look tired. It wasn't concern. It was observation. A blade wrapped in velvet. Heat crawled up my throat. It's been a busy morning. His eyes dipped, too briefly for anyone else to catch, to the place beneath my ribs, not my waist, not my hips. Lower. His gaze came back to my face with cruel calm, as if he could see the secret growing inside me like a beating heart. He murmured. That sound, half thought, half judgment, made my palms sweat. My mother clapped her hands, breaking the moment like she'd sensed something wrong. Come. We've prepared lunch. Mr. Greco, please. Luciano turned without another glance and followed her into the dining room. Sophia stayed tucked at his side, smiling like she'd already won. And I stood there in the foyer a second too long, feeling like the house had swallowed me whole. My father emerged from his study, face stern, suit immaculate, eyes calculating. He extended his hand to Luciano with a false grin. The men exchanged greetings, handshakes, polite phrases coded in threat. I watched from my place near the wall, trying to breathe normally while my body betrayed me with tiny waves of nausea. We moved to the dining room. Crystal, linen, food I couldn't stomach. The table looked like a feast for a king. Luciano sat at the head beside my father, as if the seat had been waiting for him all along. Sophia sat close enough that her knee brushed his under the table. She leaned toward him when she laughed, letting her hair fall like a curtain. Luciano didn't laugh back. He listened. He watched. He spoke when it mattered and stayed silent when it didn't. And every time the conversation drifted toward the marriage, the alliance, the ceremony, the guests, my skin tightened like I was being sewn into something too small. My mother beamed. A spring wedding would be lovely. The gardens. My father cut in. Sooner is better. The ports are unsettled. We need Greco protection before summer. Protection. That was what this marriage was. A shield my family was buying with my sister's body. Luciano lifted his glass, eyes half-lidded. Protection is expensive. My father smiled thinly. We understand. Luciano's gaze flicked, brief as a knife's flash, across the table to me. It was like he'd said it to me instead. You understand? I picked up my fork. The smell of roasted meat turned my stomach. I swallowed hard, forced the utensil down into my hand, forced my face into calm. Sophia noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes slid over me, assessing. You're not eating, Lena. Every head turned. My throat tightened. I'm fine. Sophia's smile sharpened. Are you sure? You look pale. My mother's eyes narrowed, annoyed. My father looked away, already bored with my existence. Luciano watched, not like the rest of them. Not impatient or dismissive, like he was waiting for something inevitable. I tried to lift my glass of water. My hand trembled. I hated it. I hated that my body refused to cooperate when I needed it most. Sophia tilted her head, sweetly venomous. Maybe you should see the doctor. You've been so strange lately. My heart thudded once, hard. Doctor. The word lit up every fear in my body. I managed to laugh. It's just stress. Luciano finally spoke, voice low, cutting through the chatter like a thread pulled taut. Stress doesn't usually make women sick in the morning. The fork in my hand froze. My mother blinked. Sick? Sophia's smile faltered for half a heartbeat, then returned brighter. Oh, Luciano, don't tease her. He didn't look away from me. I'm not teasing. The room went quiet around the edges, as if everyone was pretending they hadn't heard. My mother recovered first. Lena is delicate. She worries too much. Delicate. Another way of saying expendable. Luciano set his glass down with a soft click. Delicate things break. His eyes held mine with a calm that felt like a hand on my throat. Then he turned to my father as if I was no longer there. "Let's talk terms." And just like that, the conversation moved on. Contracts and schedules, who would attend, which families would be honored, what the DeSantis would gain, and what the Grecos would take. But I couldn't hear any of it. All I heard was the echo of his words. Morning. Delicate. Break. I excused myself before I could stop it. The room barely noticed my chair scrape back. Sophia didn't even glance up. In the hallway, the air felt thinner. I walked quickly, one hand pressed to my stomach as if I could hold my secret in place by force. The bathroom door shut behind me with a soft, final click. I leaned over the sink. My breath came in shallow bursts. For a moment, I thought I might throw up, but it didn't come. It hovered in my throat like a threat, then retreated. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked too big, my lips too pale. A woman holding herself together with sheer refusal. My hand slid lower, over the flatness of my belly that wouldn't stay flat forever. There was nothing to see yet. But I could feel it anyway. A quiet, terrifying future. A child. His child. Luciano Greco's heir. The words made my knees weaken. I gripped the sink until my knuckles whitened. "You cannot do this," I whispered to my reflection as if I could scold myself into undoing it. "You cannot." As if the past could be bullied into changing. As if that night his hands, his voice, the way he'd looked at me like I wasn't invisible for once, hadn't already happened. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them, he was in the doorway behind me. I spun so fast the room tilted. My pulse slammed into my throat. "What?" Luciano closed the door without rushing, without apology. The lock didn't click. It didn't have to. The simple act of him standing between me and escape was enough. His gaze swept over me, taking in the white grip marks on the sink, the sheen of sweat on my brow, the panic I couldn't hide. "You ran," he said quietly. "I needed air." He took a step closer, that same one-step invasion of the space. "You needed to hide." My voice came out too sharp. "You can't be here." He tilted his head, studying me like a problem. "And yet." I forced myself to stand straight. "This is my family's home," he hummed, low. "It won't be." The words hit like a slap. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat locked around every protest. Luciano's gaze dropped again, down, down, as if it belonged there, as if he could see through skin and bone and fear. "Tell me," he said, voice like a quiet command. "How many weeks?" The room went cold. My heart stopped. For a second, I didn't even understand what he'd asked. Then it hit me. Hard, undeniable. He knew, or he was close enough to the truth that it didn't matter. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. "I don't know what you mean." Luciano's eyes lifted to mine, dark and steady. "Don't lie to me, Lena." My name in his mouth felt like danger. He took another step. Now he was close enough that I could smell him. Leather, rain, something smoky beneath it. Close enough that the air between us felt charged. I backed up until the edge of the vanity pressed into my hips. "You came here to marry my sister," I whispered. He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He simply stared at me with a patience that felt cruel. Then he spoke, and his voice was so low it could have been a confession. "I came here," Luciano said, "to secure what belongs to me." My breath caught. My body went utterly still, because the way his gaze held mine made one thing terrifyingly clear. He wasn't talking about my sister. I should have screamed. That's what a normal girl would have done, at least a girl who still believed doors were meant to keep people out. But nothing about Luciano Greco belonged in the category of normal, and nothing about my life did either. So I stood there, pinned between the vanity and his shadow, and listened to my own heartbeat try to escape my chest. His gaze didn't move. It stayed on my face, like it owned the right. "I came here," he repeated, quieter now, "to secure what belongs to me." My throat tightened until even swallowing felt like betrayal. "You don't get to say things like that," I managed. Luciano's eyes flicked to my mouth. Not hunger, control. Like he was measuring how much defiance I could hold before I snapped. "I get to say whatever I want," he said. "The question is what you're going to do about it." I hated that my body reacted first, the way heat rose under my skin, the way the air between us felt thick, charged, like the second before the match struck. I forced my hands to unclench. "You're here for Sophia." His expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. A shift, a fraction of irritation like I'd said the wrong name. "I'm here for an alliance," he said. Sophia is part of the arrangement. Arrangement, like furniture, like a signature, like a thing you placed where it served you. And yet my sister had been glowing all afternoon like she'd already been crowned queen. I tried to step around him. This is inappropriate. Luciano moved barely. He didn't block me with brute force. He simply angled his shoulder, and suddenly there was no path past him without brushing him. It was worse than being grabbed, because it was a choice. I stood still. His voice dropped, threaded with something darker. How many weeks, Lena? My lungs forgot what they were supposed to do. I stared at him, willing my face to stay calm, willing my eyes not to give me away. You're not entitled to that information. Luciano leaned in, just enough that I could feel the warmth of him. His cologne was expensive and restrained, like him. Nothing loud, nothing careless. I'm entitled to anything that affects my family, he said. My stomach turned hard. My family. So he did know. Or he suspected strongly enough that he was already speaking as if it was true. I lifted my chin. You don't have a claim on me. His eyes darkened. You sure about that? The memory of that night, his hands, the way he'd said my name like I mattered, flashed hot behind my eyes. I pushed it down, buried it under years of training. Don't react, don't crack, don't give men like him a weakness to grab. I'm not doing this with you, I said. Luciano watched me for a long beat. Then, like he'd decided something, he stepped back. It should have felt like relief. It didn't. It felt like the moment a predator stopped playing. Good, he said, because we're not doing anything. Not yet. Not yet. My skin prickled. He turned toward the door, hand on the knob, and paused. Fix your face. I blinked. What? Your family will notice. His voice stayed calm, almost bored. They'll ask questions you won't want to answer. Rage flared, bright and reckless. You come into my house and corner me in a bathroom and you're worried about my face? Luciano glanced back. The look he gave me was quiet dominance, no raised voice, no threat, just certainty. I'm worried about control, he said. Yours, mine, theirs. Then he opened the door and left as if he hadn't just shattered my lungs with a single question. I stayed frozen until his footsteps faded down the hall. Only then did I exhale. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking. When I returned to the dining room, everyone was laughing. My mother was in full performance mode, her smile too wide, her voice too sweet. My father talked numbers and territory. Sophia leaned close to Luciano with a laugh meant for his ear. Luciano sat as if he hadn't just been in the bathroom with me. He didn't look at me when I entered. Of course, he didn't. If he looked at me, it would be too much, too obvious, too dangerous. So I took my place near the sideboard like a shadow, like a daughter who existed to refill glasses and smile at the men who decided our fate. Sophia's eyes caught mine and narrowed, subtle, a question disguised as curiosity. She noticed everything. She always had. Luciano's gaze lifted at last. Not to my face. Briefly, to my hand as I poured water. He watched the tiny tremor in my wrist. Then his eyes flicked up and met mine. A silent warning. Control. I swallowed, forcing my shoulders to settle, forcing calm into my spine. The conversation shifted as my father clapped Luciano on the shoulder. We'll move to the study. The women can enjoy their coffee. The women. Meaning, get out. This is men's business. Luciano stood. Sophia stood with him like she was already his wife, hand sliding into the crook of his elbow. Luciano didn't offer it. Again. But he allowed it. His eyes on my father, his posture unyielding. Sophia leaned in and said something soft, flirtatious. Luciano's only response was a slight nod, polite, distant, controlled. Then, as the men began to file toward the study, Luciano's gaze slid across the room, to me. Just for a heartbeat. But it landed like a brand. And then he was gone. The doors to the study closed. The house exhaled. My mother turned to Sophia with glowing pride. He's perfect, strong, quiet, a man who will keep us safe. Sophia smiled like she'd been praised for a victory she hadn't earned. He's intense. My mother laughed. That's what you want, a man who can crush problems. Sophia's fingers traced the rim of her cup. He barely touched me. My mother's smile faltered, then she recovered, waving a hand. He's not a boy in love. He's a don. He'll warm to you once the papers are signed, once he owns the alliance. Owns. I hated the word in my mother's mouth. Sophia's eyes slid to me. Lena looks like she's going to faint again. My mother's attention snapped to me, irritation sharpening her features. Lena, please don't be dramatic today. I'm not, I said, because there was nothing else to say. Sophia tilted her head. Sweet poison. Maybe she should bring coffee to the study. Be useful. My mother frowned as if considering. Then she nodded. Yes, good. Lena, take the tray and don't hover. Set it down and leave. Sophia's smile widened. Just a fraction. She wanted me in that room. She wanted me under Luciano's eyes. She wanted to test what I would do. Or maybe she just wanted to enjoy watching me squirm. I lifted the silver tray with cups and sugar bowl, my hands steady now through sheer will. In the hallway, the air was cooler. The house felt different with the Greco men inside, like my childhood home had become occupied territory. One of Luciano's guards stood outside the study door. He glanced at me without warmth, checked the tray, then stepped aside. My heart hammered as I entered. The study smelled like leather and smoke and old money. Luciano stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, listening as my father spoke. Two other men, one from our side, one from his, sat at the desk with papers spread out like a map of our future. Luciano turned his head when I walked in. Not fully. Just enough to confirm I was there. My father didn't pause. And the DeSantis shipping lanes will be shared. 50-50 profits for the first year, adjusted after the wedding. 60-40, Luciano said quietly. My father stiffened. That's... Luciano didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. It's what I'm offering. Protection comes with a premium. His gaze slid to me as I set the tray down. It was like he was saying it to my belly, not my father. Protection. Premium. My fingers tightened on the tray's edge. I placed coffee in front of my father, then in front of Luciano. When my hand moved near his, he didn't touch me. He didn't have to. He simply watched my fingers, my tremor, my restraint, like he was cataloging me. I backed away, ready to escape. Luciano spoke again, smooth and deadly. Lena, stay. The room went still. My father looked up, surprised. What? Luciano's eyes remained on me. She's part of this house. She'll hear what affects her family. My father frowned. This is not... Luciano cut him off without cutting him off. It's fine. That's all he said. Not permission. A decision. And my father, my proud, controlling father, swallowed his protest. Because in our world, men like Luciano Greco didn't ask. They took. My stomach rolled. I stayed near the wall, hands clasped in front of me, pretending I wasn't shaking. Luciano returned his attention to the papers. The engagement announcement will go out tomorrow, wedding date within 4 weeks. 4 weeks. My vision flickered. 4 weeks meant my body would change before that. My secret wouldn't stay quiet much longer. 4 weeks meant I'd be trapped in this house under my sister's smile while my belly became evidence. My father nodded slowly. We can arrange that. Luciano's gaze lifted. You will arrange it. My father's jaw flexed. Of course. The other men exchanged quiet looks. Everyone was calculating. Everyone was measuring what they could gain. No one looked at me, except Luciano. His eyes flicked to my face again, and I felt it, an invisible tether tightening. Lena, he said, still calm. How old are you? My father blinked. Why does that matter? It matters, Luciano said. I swallowed. My voice came out soft. 23. Luciano nodded as if he already knew. Not a child. My father's expression hardened. No. Luciano's gaze didn't leave me. Then she should stop being treated like one. The words hit me harder than any insult, because they weren't kindness. They were ownership by another route. My father forced a laugh. Lena is sensitive. She'll be married soon enough. Luciano's eyes sharpened. To whom? The question cracked through the room like a slap. My father's laughter died. That's not decided. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Everything is decided. Silence. My skin went cold. Luciano turned back to the papers. Add a clause. His consigliere, an older man with silver hair and eyes like ice, lifted a brow. Which clause, Don Luciano? Luciano didn't hesitate. Lena remains under Greco protection while she lives in this house. Any threat against her is treated as a threat against the alliance. My father stared. That's excessive. Luciano finally looked at my father fully. Then don't be a weak point. My father's face flushed with anger. But he didn't argue. He couldn't. Not with Greco men in his study. Not with the weight of a contract sitting between them like a weapon. Luciano's gaze returned to me, softer only in volume. You'll follow instructions. I blinked. Excuse me? Luciano's voice stayed level. If my men tell you to move, you move. If they tell you to stay inside, you stay. If they take your phone, you don't complain. My throat tightened. You can't. Luciano tilted his head. I can, and I will. His eyes dipped again, down to my middle, the place that wasn't showing, the place that still felt like mine. Because, he added quietly, you're not safe. My pulse hammered so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. My father's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Luciano didn't answer him. He didn't owe him an explanation. Instead, he looked at me like he was issuing a private sentence. Go, he said now. I didn't move fast enough. Luciano's voice sharpened just a notch. Lena. I left. My legs carried me into the hallway, but my mind stayed behind, trapped in the study with his words. You're not safe. Because of what I was carrying. Because of what I'd done. Because of what he might do when the truth stopped being a question and became a fact. In the kitchen, I pressed both palms against the counter and breathed through the nausea. My aunt's housekeeper watched me with pity. Pity was almost worse than cruelty. At least cruelty was honest. Sophia drifted in minutes later like a perfume cloud, shutting the door behind her. Interesting, she said lightly. I didn't look up. What is? Luciano asked about you. She poured herself water as if she owned the whole world. Men don't do that unless they're curious. I kept my face blank. He asked because I brought coffee. Sophia laughed. No, he asked because he likes to know what he owns. The word hit again. Owns. She sipped her water. So, what did you do to make him look at you like that? My stomach clenched so hard, I nearly doubled. I turned slowly, keeping my expression calm through pure violence of will. You're imagining things. Sophia's eyes gleamed. Am I? She stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were sisters sharing secrets instead of enemies sharing blood. You've been sick, she said. You don't eat, you disappear. Her gaze dropped, assessing. And Luciano Greco just put you under his protection like you're important. I held her gaze. Maybe he's being polite. Sophia's smile sharpened. Luciano Greco doesn't do polite. A beat of silence. Then she leaned closer, voice almost a whisper. If you're hiding something, Lena, you should tell me, because I'm the one marrying him. I'm the one who will be punished if there's scandal. Punished. She said it like she feared it, like she expected it. And suddenly I understood something small and ugly. Sophia didn't want Luciano because she loved him. She wanted him because he would make her powerful, and she feared him because he could also make her disappear. I straightened. There's no scandal. Sophia's fingers brushed my arm, feigning affection. Her nails were perfect, glossy. Her touch was light and cruel. Good, because if there is, she smiled, sweet as syrup, I'll find it. She walked out, leaving the scent of her perfume behind like a stain. I stood alone in the kitchen, hands pressed to the counter, trying to breathe around the panic, because I knew the truth. It wasn't just Luciano Greco who was hunting my secret now. It was my own sister. That night, my mother insisted we dine with the Greco entourage again. A smaller meal, more intimate, which really meant more chances for Sophia to shine and more chances for my family to prove we were worth keeping alive. I sat at the far end of the table, quiet, invisible. Luciano sat across from me, still, controlled, his presence a weight. Sophia talked too much, my mother laughed too brightly, my father drank too quickly. Luciano watched. He barely ate, he rarely spoke, but when he did, the room bent toward him. At one point, Sophia leaned close to Luciano and whispered something, her hand sliding onto his forearm. Luciano's gaze didn't change, he didn't pull away, he didn't lean in. He simply endured her touch like it was rain, unpleasant, inevitable, irrelevant. Then his eyes shifted past her, to me, and I knew, with a cold certainty, that the engagement had nothing to do with desire. It was politics. And politics didn't care about hearts. Politics cared about heirs. My stomach turned. I pushed my plate away. Luciano's voice cut through the table, low and calm. You're not eating again. Everyone froze. My mother's eyes flashed with annoyance. Sophia's smile faltered. I forced a polite tone. I'm fine. Luciano set his fork down. You're not. Sophia laughed too quickly. Luciano, she's always like this, sensitive. Luciano didn't look at Sophia. I wasn't speaking to you. The air snapped tight. Sophia's cheeks flushed. My mother went rigid. Luciano's gaze stayed on me. After dinner, you'll come with me. My heart slammed into my ribs. What? My father's voice sharpened. Where? Luciano finally looked at him. A conversation. My father bristled. Alone? Luciano's smile was barely there. You can send a guard to stand outside the door, if it helps you feel less helpless. My father's jaw clenched. He nodded once, because again, Luciano didn't ask. Dinner ended in a blur. Sophia kissed Luciano's cheek with a triumphant smile for the audience. Luciano allowed it, unmoved. Then he turned to me. "Now," he said. My legs felt unsteady as I followed him down the hall toward the smaller sitting room, the one with the fireplace and heavy drapes. A Greco guard stood outside as Luciano opened the door and gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside. Luciano shut the door behind us, not locking it, not needing to. He leaned back against the door, arms folded, and watched me like he was about to take something he'd been patient enough to wait for. My pulse thundered. Luciano's voice was quiet. "You're going to stop pretending you don't understand what's happening." I tried to breathe. "What's happening is you're marrying my sister." Luciano held my gaze. "That's what they think." My blood went cold. He pushed off the door and took one slow step toward me. "Listen carefully," he said. "I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to answer it, and if you lie—" He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel him, but not touching. His restraint was its own kind of grip. "I will still find the truth," he finished softly, "but I won't be gentle about it." My throat tightened. "I don't owe you anything." Luciano's eyes lowered again, to my belly, then back up. "You owe me honesty," he said, voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Because if you're carrying what I think you're carrying, this house becomes a battlefield, a beat." His gaze sharpened. "And I don't lose battles, Lena." He wasn't asking anymore. He was closing in. I didn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bed, silk sheets my mother insisted were proper, a chandelier that made the ceiling glow like a guilty halo, and listened to the house breathe around me. Not softly, not peacefully. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage dressed up as one. And downstairs, behind locked doors and polite laughter, Luciano Greco was turning my family's future into numbers on paper, while my body turned his bloodline into something living. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him in that sitting room, leaning forward, voice low, gaze dropping to the place I couldn't hide. "If you're carrying what I think you're carrying, this house becomes a battlefield." I pressed a hand to my stomach as if my palm could calm the storm inside me. "Be quiet," I whispered, but the fear didn't listen. It never did. Morning came with an audience. My mother insisted on breakfast in the formal dining room as if we were hosting royalty instead of men who could bury us under our own marble floors. Sophia arrived first, dressed like she belonged on a magazine cover. Soft cream blouse, hair pinned just loose enough to suggest innocence, diamonds small but sharp at her throat. She kissed my mother's cheek, then let her gaze slide to me with a smile that wasn't a smile. "You look awful," she said. My mother didn't even look up from arranging place cards. "Lena, sit up straight. You're slouching like a servant." I took my seat. "Good morning." Sophia tilted her head. "Did you sleep?" I met her eyes. A little. Her gaze flicked down, quick, calculating, then back up. "You've been—" Is that the word? My stomach clenched. My mother snapped. "Sophia, don't be rude." But her tone was lazy. She wasn't stopping Sophia. She was reminding her to make cruelty look like concern. Sophia's smile softened into fake sweetness. "I'm not being rude, Mama. I'm worried. Luciano doesn't like weakness." The name hit the room like a bell. "Luciano?" My throat tightened. My mother frowned at me like I had personally offended the universe by existing. "Lena has always been sensitive. She's not made for pressure." Sophia's eyes gleamed. "That's why it's so odd that Luciano keeps noticing her." I stilled. My mother paused mid-sip. "What do you mean?" Sophia reached for her coffee, unhurried, enjoying herself. "Last night at dinner he called her out, and in the study," she shrugged delicately, "he insisted she stay." My mother's gaze snapped to me, sharp. Why would he insist that? I kept my voice calm. "I don't know." Sophia leaned in a fraction. "Maybe he likes obedient girls." The insult landed slick and quiet. My mother's mouth tightened. "Luciano is not interested in you, Lena." The way she said it, like a rule, like a law, made heat flare behind my eyes. Not because I wanted him, because the truth was worse. Because he might already be interested for reasons my mother couldn't even imagine. Sophia tapped her spoon against her cup. "Or maybe he's curious. Men like him get bored." My mother's gaze held mine, warning. "You will not embarrass this family." My jaw clenched. "I'm not trying to." Sophia smiled again, slow. "Then you won't mind being useful today." By noon, the house was full of movement. Greco men in dark suits stood like statues at the edges of every room. Our own staff moved quieter than usual, eyes down, voices low. Even the air felt like it belonged to Luciano now, controlled, watched, measured. My mother gave Sophia a list of wedding-adjacent tasks with a sparkle in her voice, like planning a prison with floral arrangements. Venue options, caterers, guest lists. Sophia accepted it all like a queen receiving tribute. Then my mother turned to me. "Lena, you'll show Mr. Greco the East Wing." I blinked. "Why?" "Because Sophia has appointments," my mother snapped, as if that answered everything. "And because you live here, you'll do it properly." Sophia's lips curved. "Yes, Lena, be charming." My pulse thudded. "I'm not—" My mother cut me off. "Don't argue." Of course. Sophia's jealousy wasn't loud, it was strategic. It was a needle slipped beneath skin. She wanted me near Luciano, not because she trusted me, because she didn't. And suspicion in my sister's eyes was more dangerous than any gun. A knock sounded from the foyer. A Greco guard appeared in the doorway. "Signorina, Don Luciano requests you." My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. My mother's face brightened as if she'd been invited to heaven. "Of course, Lena will be right there." Sophia's gaze locked on mine, sharp enough to cut. "Don Luciano requests you." The words echoed in my bones like a threat. I stood, smoothing my dress with fingers that didn't feel like mine, and followed the guard through the hallways that used to belong to my childhood. Now they belonged to him. Luciano waited in the corridor near the library, one hand in his pocket, posture relaxed in a way that was never truly relaxed. He looked up when I approached. His gaze swept over me the way it always did, quiet, thorough, impossible to escape, like he didn't need to touch me to move me. "Lena," he said. No greeting, no politeness, just my name. "Don Luciano," I replied, because titles were armor in a house like this. He took a step closer. "Stop that." My breath caught. "Stop what?" His eyes held mine. Calling me that. I should have laughed. I should have asked him if he'd lost his mind. Instead, I swallowed and said, "It's respectful." Luciano's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Respect isn't what you're doing." The air tightened. He gestured down the hall. "Show me the East Wing." I turned, grateful for movement, for something to do with my hands besides tremble. We walked side by side, not touching, but close enough that I felt him anyway, his heat, his presence, the way the hallway seemed to narrow around us. 2 Greco men followed at a distance. Not close, not far. A reminder. I opened doors, spoke about rooms, pointed out antiques my mother prized, all while my mind screamed at me to run. Luciano said little, but his silence wasn't empty. It was listening. It was watching. When we reached the East Wing balcony, sunlight poured in through tall windows, turning dust into glitter. Outside, the garden sprawled, trimmed, perfect, like Sophia. Luciano stopped at the railing, looking out. I stayed a step behind him, trying not to breathe too loudly. His voice came quietly. "You didn't answer me last night." I stiffened. "You didn't ask a question." Luciano turned his head slightly, gaze landing on me with slow force. "I asked how many weeks." My mouth went dry. "I told you," I said carefully. "I don't owe you anything." Luciano's eyes narrowed, not in anger. Calculation. "You owe me the truth." I felt panic rise, hot and fast. "Why? Because you think you can— what? Claim me? Control me? Like this house is already yours?" He stepped closer, not fast, not threatening, just certain. "My men are here because your father is a weak link," he said. "And your sister is a decoration. But you—" His gaze dipped, just for a heartbeat, then returned to my face. "You're the variable." My heart slammed. "I'm not anything." Luciano's voice dropped. "You're lying." The word hit like a slap. I lifted my chin, forcing steel into my spine. "You don't know me." Luciano's gaze held mine. "I know enough." The sunlight made his eyes look almost gold around the edges. Beautiful, cold, dangerous. He leaned in slightly, just enough that his voice could have been a secret if the world wasn't listening. "You've been sick," he murmured. "You avoid food. Your sister circles you like she smells blood, and your body—" His gaze flicked down again, and my skin burned, is already shifting. My throat tightened. "You're imagining things." Luciano's mouth curved, faint and humorless. "No." He turned back to the garden as if the conversation bored him. "You'll have a doctor." My stomach dropped. "What?" "A Greco doctor." His tone didn't change. "Today." The word today made the hallway tilt. "No," I whispered. Luciano glanced at me. That wasn't a suggestion. Fear flared into anger so fast it made me dizzy. "You can't force me to." "I can!" His voice stayed calm. "And I will." I stepped back, pulse hammering. "You're marrying my sister." Luciano's gaze sharpened like a blade catching light. And you keep saying that like it changes what's real. My breath caught. He took another step, close enough that I could smell him. Clean smoke, leather, restraint. Tell me the truth, he said softly, and you keep your dignity. I laughed once, harsh. Dignity? In this house? Luciano's gaze didn't blink. In mine, then. Mine. The word made my stomach twist. I should have run. Instead, I whispered, why do you care? For the first time, something flickered behind his control, something sharp, private. His voice came lower. Because I don't like being kept in the dark. My chest tightened. That's not caring. Luciano's eyes held mine, steady as a lock. In my world, it is. Before I could answer, footsteps approached. Sophia. Of course. She appeared at the end of the hallway like she'd been summoned by instinct. Hair gleaming, smile perfect, eyes hungry for proof. There you are, she said brightly, moving toward Luciano with practiced ease. I was looking everywhere. Mama said you were giving Luciano a tour. Luciano didn't move toward her. Sophia didn't notice, or pretended not to. She slid her hand onto his arm. Luciano allowed it for half a second. Then he gently but unmistakably removed her hand and stepped away. The shock on Sophia's face flashed fast. Then she recovered, laughing lightly. Oh, sorry, you're not used to affection yet. Luciano's eyes stayed on Sophia, expression unreadable. Affection is earned. Sophia's cheeks flushed. Of course. Her gaze slid to me, sharp as glass. Lena, you're hogging him. I forced my voice even. I was showing him the wing like Mama asked. Sophia smiled sweetly. Then you can go. I'll take it from here. Luciano's gaze flicked to me. A silent command. Stay. Sophia noticed the flicker. She had predator instincts, too. Her smile tightened. Luciano, we have appointments. The jeweler is coming, and the florist. We should go over. Later, Luciano said. Sophia blinked. Later? Luciano turned back to the balcony as if dismissing her. I'm busy. Busy? With me. My heart hammered. Sophia's voice stayed sweet, but her eyes burned. Then I'll wait. Luciano didn't respond. Sophia turned her smile to me, poisonous. Lena, could you fetch me water? I'm suddenly parched. It was a test, a leash tug. My mother would expect me to obey. Sophia expected me to obey. Luciano turned his head slightly. No, Sophia froze. My breath caught. Luciano's gaze stayed calm on Sophia. If you're thirsty, ask the staff. Lena isn't your servant. Sophia's face flushed deeper. I didn't mean. Luciano cut her off with quiet finality. You did. Silence spread like spilled ink. Sophia's eyes flicked to me, rage contained behind a smile. Then she turned, stepping closer to Luciano, lowering her voice into something intimate. Is she your type? Sophia murmured. My stomach dropped. Luciano's gaze didn't move. What? Sophia laughed softly. Shy, fragile, always looking like she's going to break. Her eyes slid to me again. Some men like broken things. My hands clenched. Luciano's voice came low, dangerous. Careful. Sophia's smile widened, defiant. I'm just asking. We're going to be married? I should know what you like. Luciano finally looked at her fully. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop. I like loyalty, he said. Sophia's smile faltered for half a second. Luciano's gaze sharpened. And honesty. Sophia recovered, laughing too brightly. Then you'll love me. Luciano didn't laugh. His eyes slid to me. And in that look, quiet, heavy, I felt him press something into the space between us like a warning. Don't test me. Not here. Not with Sophia watching. Not with the house listening. Sophia stepped back, smoothing her skirt. Fine, I'll go see Mama. She'll be thrilled you're busy. The way she said it made my skin crawl. She turned to leave, then paused, and looked over her shoulder at me. Her smile turned small and sharp. Lena, don't get ideas. Then she walked away, heels clicking down the corridor like a countdown. The moment she vanished, my breath came out shaky. Luciano watched me, expression unreadable. She hates me, I whispered. Luciano's gaze stayed steady. She doesn't hate you. I frowned. Then what is this? Luciano's voice came quiet. Fear. My pulse stuttered. He stepped closer, and this time there was no balcony rail between us, no sunlight to soften him. Your sister is afraid, Luciano said, because she senses she isn't the center of this story. My throat tightened. And am I? Luciano's gaze dipped again, down, then returned to my eyes. You're carrying something that shifts power, he murmured. My vision flickered. I backed up, but there was nowhere to go. My spine hit the balcony doorframe. Luciano didn't touch me. He didn't have to. His presence held me still. You're going to see the doctor, he said softly. Today. No, I whispered, voice breaking despite me. Luciano's gaze hardened. If you refuse, your sister will push. Your mother will pry. Your father will sell you to whichever man bids highest. His voice dipped lower. I'm offering you a safer cage. I flinched at the word. Luciano's mouth twitched. You heard me. My chest tightened, anger mixing with fear. You don't get to decide what's safe for me. Luciano's eyes locked on mine. Then decide. The silence stretched. I opened my mouth to speak, and the nausea hit. Hard. My stomach rolled violently, and a cold sweat broke across my skin. The hallway tilted. The sunlight turned too bright. My ears rang. No, I whispered, grabbing for the railing. My fingers slipped. The world tipped. And then a hand caught me, not gentle, not rough, certain. Luciano's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against him before I could hit the floor. His other hand came up to steady my shoulder, firm through fabric, anchoring me like he'd caught me 100 times before. For a second, I couldn't breathe, because I was pressed against him, because his body was solid heat and control, because his hand, right there at my middle, felt too close to the secret inside me. His voice came low, right by my ear. There it is. I swallowed, dizzy. Let go. Luciano didn't. He held me upright, his grip unyielding, his breath warm against my temple. You're shaking, he murmured. I'm fine. He huffed a small sound, almost a laugh, but darker. You're stubborn. My hands fisted in his shirt for balance. The expensive fabric slid under my fingers like a sin. I hated that my body leaned into him. I hated that my heartbeat calmed with him holding me. Luciano's voice dropped again, private and sharp. Look at me. I forced my eyes up. His gaze was right there, close enough to drown in. You're keeping something, he said softly. My throat tightened until words hurt. You don't know what you're talking about. Luciano's grip tightened a fraction. Not painful, possessive. I know you're lying, he murmured, and I know your sister is watching for weakness. His gaze flicked past me, toward the corridor where Sophia had gone. So here's what you're going to do. I swallowed hard. I'm not. Luciano cut me off, voice quiet but absolute. You're going to drink water, you're going to eat something bland, and you're going to come with me for the doctor. I tried to pull back. Luciano didn't let me. His mouth hovered near my ear, and his voice turned into a vow I didn't want to hear. If you're carrying my heir, he whispered, no one touches you without my permission. My breath caught. The word heir landed in my bones like a stamp. Luciano's eyes held mine, unblinking. Do you understand? He asked. I wanted to say no. I wanted to spit in his face and run and throw myself into the garden like I could escape destiny with bare feet. But I couldn't even keep my stomach steady. So I whispered the only truth I could admit. I understand what you're saying. Luciano's gaze softened by a fraction, not tender, focused. Good, he murmured. Then, finally, he loosened his hold, just enough to let me stand on my own, but not enough to let me forget who had caught me. He stepped back, eyes still on me, and spoke like a final warning. Fix your face, he said. Your sister will smell fear. I swallowed. Because he was right, and because I could already hear Sophia's heels somewhere down the hall, coming back, hunting for proof. I didn't faint because I was weak. I fainted because my body was screaming the truth my mouth wouldn't say. I didn't get far before Sophia found me. Of course she did. In this house, secrets didn't survive sunlight, especially when my sister was the one holding the magnifying glass. I walked away from the balcony with my spine stiff and my face arranged into something passable. Luciano's words clung to me like smoke. Fix your face. Your sister will smell fear. He wasn't wrong. Sophia was waiting in the corridor, one shoulder resting against the wall like she'd been there the whole time. Her expression was sweet. Her eyes were not. Well, she murmured, that was dramatic. I kept moving. Move. She pushed off the wall, strolling beside me as if we were friends. I heard voices, and then I heard you. She clicked her tongue, mock sympathy, almost hitting the floor. I didn't hit the floor. No, Sophia said, too bright, because Luciano caught you. The name slid between my ribs. I refused to look at her. You're imagining things. Sophia laughed softly. Am I? Because the guard at the end of the hall looked like he'd seen a ghost, and Luciano looked. Her voice dipped, almost delighted. Interested. I stopped walking. Sophia stopped too, turning her face toward mine like a cat waiting for me to flinch. He wasn't interested, I said. Sophia's smile widened. Don't insult me, Lena. I've spent my whole life watching men. I know what interest looks like. My stomach rolled. I forced my breathing steady. You're engaged to him. You have nothing to worry about. That made her eyes sharpen. "Oh," she whispered. "So you admit there's something to worry about." I felt the trap clamp shut. I stared at her and let my voice go cold. "I admit you like to invent problems so you can feel powerful." Sophia blinked once, surprised I'd said it. Then she recovered, smoothing invisible lint from her sleeve. "Careful, you're starting to sound bitter." "Maybe I am." Sophia leaned closer, voice soft enough to be intimate. "If you're sick, Lena, you should tell Mama. If there's something wrong with you, it could embarrass us." Wrong, that word. My fingers curled inside my skirt. "There's nothing wrong with me." Sophia's eyes slid down my body in a slow, deliberate scan, like she was measuring me for changes. Then she smiled again. "Good, because Luciano doesn't like surprises." She turned and walked away, heels clicking like a metronome, counting down the days until my body betrayed me in front of everyone. I stood alone in the corridor, nausea twisting, anger burning. And somewhere behind it all, a memory I'd been suffocating for weeks, months, started to stir. Because Sophia wasn't the only one who knew how to hunt. Luciano had smelled the truth on me the moment he walked into this house. Maybe before. I didn't go back to the dining room. I couldn't. Instead, I slipped into the smaller sitting room, my grandmother's old retreat with velvet chairs and a chandelier that glittered like it was trying too hard to be happy. I sat on the edge of a chair and pressed 2 fingers to my wrist. My pulse was still too fast. My mind kept replaying the moment he caught me. Not the humiliation, not the faintness, the certainty. His arm around my waist wasn't gentle. It wasn't rough either. It was inevitable, like gravity. Like he'd always been the thing my body would fall into when it couldn't hold itself up anymore. I closed my eyes, and the memory I didn't want came rushing in anyway. It happened months ago, before my family knew the Grecos were coming, before Sophia started collecting wedding inspiration like she could manifest a crown out of silk and flowers. A fundraiser. A charity gala with too much champagne and too many men in suits pretending they were civilized. My mother had dressed me in black, slim and elegant. "You'll stand near Sophia," she'd instructed. "Smile. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look hungry." Hungry for what, she hadn't clarified. Love, attention, freedom, all of those were equally forbidden. I'd obeyed because that's what I did. Until Luciano Greco walked into that ballroom and the air turned sharp. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not officially. The Grecos didn't attend our little society performances unless they wanted to remind everyone who owned the city. He came in like the night, quiet, heavy, swallowing light. I saw women notice him the way flowers turn towards sun. Men noticed too, but with their shoulders tightening, their smiles thinning. He wasn't from our world of polite lies. He was from the world underneath it. I tried not to look. I failed. His gaze found mine from across the room like it had been waiting. And I swear, hand on my own heart, my body recognized him before my mind did. Something ancient in me went still, like prey, like fate. Sophia had been beside me, laughing, flirting with a banker's son. She didn't notice Luciano at all at first. She noticed the attention he pulled, then she noticed him. And she wanted him. You could see it in her smile, in the way she leaned forward slightly, like the world should bend toward her. But Luciano didn't look at her. He looked at me. I'd felt it, heat rushing up my throat, something clenching low in my belly that made me furious at myself. I excused myself to the restroom, needing air, and didn't make it to the restroom. I made it to the terrace. The balcony doors were open, and outside was cold and dark and empty. I stepped out, letting the night bite my skin, and I told myself I was safe. Then the doors closed behind me. I turned. Luciano stood there, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "I didn't invite you," I said, my voice sharper than my shaking hands. "You ran," he replied. The same word, the same accusation. I needed air. Luciano's gaze swept over me, slow, thorough. "You needed to stop performing." I hated that he saw right through me. "You don't know anything about me." His mouth twitched. "I know your family." That was worse. The city had been whispering about the Greco heir for years. Luciano Greco, cold, brilliant, brutal when necessary. A man who didn't waste violence but didn't fear it either. I should have gone back inside, but he was between me and the doors now, not blocking, just present. "What do you want?" I asked. Luciano took a step closer, not touching, not threatening, just close enough to change the air. To ask you a question, he said. I lifted my chin. Ask. His gaze dropped to my mouth. Do you always look like you're about to break, or is that just tonight? It wasn't flirtation. It was a challenge. I should have laughed. I should have walked away. Instead, something inside me, something tired of being good, rose up and met him. Maybe I'm not the one who breaks, I said. Luciano's eyes sharpened. A flicker of interest, real interest, struck through his control. Is that so? I stepped closer because I was reckless and angry and sick of Sophia being the only daughter allowed to be wanted. Maybe you should stop underestimating people, I whispered. Luciano's gaze held mine. Maybe you should stop provoking men who don't play nice. My breath caught. The night felt too quiet, too intimate. I could hear my own heartbeat like a drum. And then Luciano lifted his hand, slowly, deliberately, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. It wasn't romantic. It was intimate in the way possession was intimate. My whole body lit up like I'd been struck. I should have slapped his hand away. I didn't. I stood there, trembling, while his thumb brushed my skin. Barely. You're shaking, he murmured. Because you shouldn't be touching me, I whispered. Luciano's eyes stayed on mine. Then tell me to stop. I opened my mouth. No sound came out. Because the truth was, I didn't want him to stop. Not because I was in love, because he made me feel seen in a way my family never had. Because he looked at me like I was real. Like I wasn't just the second daughter. The extra. The quiet one. Luciano's voice dropped lower. Say it, Lena. Hearing my name from him, like it belonged in his mouth, made something inside me snap. I closed the distance myself. My hands curled into his coat, and I kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was desperate and furious, like I could steal something from fate if I moved fast enough. Luciano didn't move for half a second. Then his hand slid to the back of my neck, and he took over. Not with force, with certainty. Like he'd been waiting. Like he'd always known I would fall into him. The night blurred. The terrace. The cold. The city lights below like glittering sins. I remember his mouth at my throat, his voice in my ear, low, controlled, warning me without stopping me. I remember the way he made me feel held and hunted at the same time. And then, later, the inside of a car, tinted windows, rain tapping softly like applause, his hand on my thigh, my breath breaking, his voice, look at me. My voice, don't. His answer, too late. I don't remember everything. I remember enough. Enough to know I walked back into that ballroom afterward with lips swollen and a soul on fire, and Sophia looked at me like she smelled smoke. And I remember Luciano disappearing before anyone could tie him to me, as if the night had never happened, as if I hadn't. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself it had been a mistake. I told myself he'd never think of me again, until my period didn't come, until my stomach started rejecting the world. Until Luciano Greco walked into my family's house and looked at me like he'd found what he'd lost. The sitting room door opened. I jolted, breath-catching. Luciano stepped inside and closed the door behind him. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to warn me. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at me, sitting too stiff on the chair, hands clenched, eyes wide. Your sister is looking for you, he said finally. I swallowed. Let her. Luciano's gaze flicked down to my hands. You're shaking again. I'm fine. He hummed, the same sound that meant he didn't believe me. Then he moved, crossing the room with slow, deliberate steps, and sat in the chair opposite mine, not beside me, not cornering me, still controlling the space. His presence filled the room anyway. Did you tell her? He asked. My throat tightened. Tell her what? Luciano's eyes lifted. Don't play games with me. Anger flared, hot and sharp. You don't get to talk to me like you own me. Luciano's expression didn't change. I don't own you. The words should have relieved me. They didn't. Because the next sentence came like a blade sliding free. Yet. My breath caught. Luciano leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, his voice lowered. You remember the terrace? It wasn't a question. My skin went cold. I forced my gaze away, staring at the chandelier like it could save me. That was a mistake? Luciano finished, voice quiet. That's what you told yourself. My chest tightened. It meant nothing. Luciano's laugh was soft and humorless. Liar. I snapped my eyes back to him. You left. His gaze sharpened. I removed myself. That's the same thing. No, he said. Leaving is running. I don't run. I swallowed hard. Then what was it? Luciano stared at me like he was deciding how much truth I deserved. Then he said, I didn't want you turned into leverage. My breath stuttered. Don't, I whispered. Don't pretend you cared. Luciano's eyes didn't blink. I didn't pretend anything. I made a choice. What choice? My voice cracked. To disappear? Luciano's jaw tightened. To let you go. The words hit harder there than I wanted them to, because there was something brutal about being let go without ever being asked if you wanted to be held. I laughed once, bitter. Congratulations, you did a great job. Luciano's gaze dipped, then rose again, and now I'm here. My pulse thundered. Why? I whispered. Luciano's voice turned low, absolute. Because you're in danger. I'm not. Luciano's eyes narrowed. You're carrying a secret in a house full of hungry mouths your sister will bite first. My stomach rolled. He was right, and I hated him for it. I stood up abruptly, needing space, needing air. I didn't ask for any of this. Luciano stood too, smooth, controlled, closing the distance without rushing. I know, he murmured. That softness, barely there, made my throat tighten. I didn't ask to want you, he added, quieter. My breath caught. My eyes snapped to his. Luciano's gaze held mine, dark and steady. But I'm not going to pretend you're nothing. My heart hammered like it was trying to break out of my body. I shook my head, voice trembling. You're engaged to my sister. Luciano's mouth barely moved. That's politics. And what am I? I demanded. A problem? A weakness? Luciano stepped closer until there was only inches between us. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. His voice went low. You're the truth. My lungs forgot how to work. He lifted his hand slowly, stopping just short of my stomach, not touching, hovering, as if he was letting me decide whether he was allowed. My entire body went rigid. Tell me, he murmured. How many weeks? I stared at his hand, hovering like a question mark. My mouth opened. No sound came out, because if I said it, it became real. If I said it, I couldn't pretend it was just stress, just sickness, just bad luck. Luciano's voice dropped even lower. Lena. My name again, like a lock turning. I swallowed hard, throat burning. I don't know exactly, I whispered. 6, maybe 7. The words fell into the room like a confession. Luciano went utterly still. For a beat, I thought he might react. Anger, triumph, something. He didn't. He simply closed his eyes for half a second, like he was absorbing a blow. Then he opened them and looked at me with something that made my chest ache. Not tenderness. Possession mixed with awe. Mine, he said softly. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It landed on my skin like a brand. I flinched. Don't. Luciano's gaze sharpened. Don't what? Don't claim me like I'm an object. Luciano's hand finally touched me, but not where I expected. He cupped my jaw, gentle enough to make me hate him more for it. You're not an object, he said, voice quiet. You're the mother of my heir. My eyes burned. I never agreed to that. Luciano's thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, the same place he'd touched on the terrace. You agreed to me once, he murmured. I swallowed hard. That was a mistake. Luciano's eyes darkened. No. His hand fell from my face, tough, sliding away like restraint. Here's the truth, he said. If your sister discovers this first, she'll use it. If your father discovers it, he'll sell it. If my enemies smell it, they'll cut it out of you. My blood went cold. He leaned in, voice a blade wrapped in silk. So you're going to see my doctor, today, and you're going to do exactly what my men tell you. I shook my head, panic rising. You can't just... Luciano cut me off. I can. Then his voice softened, just a fraction, and it was worse. Because I'm not losing you, he whispered. Not to them, not to your sister, not to your fear. My chest tightened. You don't get to say that. Luciano's gaze held mine. Watch me. A sharp knock hit the door. Luciano didn't even look away. Come. The door cracked open. One of his guards leaned in, eyes flicking to me with professional neutrality. Don Luciano, the doctor has arrived. My stomach dropped. Today. It was happening today. Luciano's gaze stayed on me, unyielding. We're going. I didn't move. The guard lingered, waiting for orders. Luciano's voice turned quiet, dangerous in its calm. Lena. I swallowed hard. If I go, Sophia will know. Luciano's mouth tightened. Let her wonder. And if she follows? Luciano's eyes went flat. Then she learns where she stands. My heart hammered. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run that didn't end with my secret being found by someone worse. Luciano stepped closer, stopping just short of touching me again. His voice dropped to something only I could hear. You can fight me, he murmured, or you can let me protect you. Protect. Cage, silk, battlefield. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Then I opened them and whispered, fine. Luciano's gaze didn't soften, but something in him settled, as if the world had snapped into the position he'd been forcing it toward. "Good," he said. He turned to the guard. "Move her through the back corridor. No staff, no family." The guard nodded and disappeared. Luciano looked back at me, and for the first time he didn't look like a man making a deal. He looked like a man making a vow. "You stay close," he said. My voice trembled. "And if I don't?" Luciano stepped in close enough that his breath warmed my cheek. "Then I carry you," he murmured. My pulse stuttered. He leaned back slightly, gaze burning into mine. "And Lena?" His voice turned soft in the most lethal way. "Yes?" "Don't lie to me again." I had just confessed the truth. And he was already moving pieces around me like I belonged on his board. The back corridor smelled like dust and polish and old secrets. It wasn't meant for guests. It was meant for staff. Silent feet, lowered eyes, people who understood that in houses like ours, the most important work happened where no one was supposed to look. Luciano walked beside me like he'd always belonged there, not in a servant hallway, in my life. His men moved ahead and behind us with quiet precision, creating a moving pocket of space that no one else could enter. The moment we turned the corner near the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of a maid, eyes widening, hand flying to her mouth, before one of Luciano's guards angled his body and blocked her view. No words, no threat, just control. My stomach twisted. "Where is he?" I whispered, keeping my voice low. Luciano didn't look at me. "In the blue parlor." Of course, the blue parlor was small, tucked away, a room my mother kept pristine for intimate guests she wanted to impress without allowing them full access to the house. The curtains were thick, the door closed smoothly. The furniture was expensive enough to intimidate, perfect for a private examination that could ruin me. My mouth went dry. This is insane. Luciano's gaze flicked to me. Quick, heavy. "This is necessary," I swallowed. "You don't know what necessary feels like when it's your body." Luciano didn't respond right away. His jaw flexed once, subtle. Then he said, quiet and flat, "You think I haven't had my body used as a battlefield?" The words landed like a slap. I looked up at him, startled, but he didn't elaborate. His eyes stayed forward, focused on the end of the hallway, like even the hint of vulnerability was something he wouldn't allow to exist for more than a second. We reached the blue parlor door. One of his men opened it. Luciano stepped in first, and my whole body froze, because the room wasn't empty. A man stood near the window, older than Luciano, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked too expensive to belong to a doctor who made house calls. His hair was silver at the temples, his expression calm, eyes sharp and unblinking. Not warm, not comforting. A professional who'd seen blood and lies and still slept at night. He turned when we entered and gave Luciano a nod that held more respect than my father had ever earned from anyone. "Don Luciano," he said. Then his gaze shifted to me. "Signorina." Luciano's hand touched the small of my back, barely a quiet directive. "Dr. Santoro," Luciano said. "This is Lena." My name sounded strange in this room, like a mistake. Dr. Santoro's eyes flicked across me with clinical speed. "How far along?" My throat tightened. Luciano answered before I could. 6, maybe 7. The doctor nodded as if this was a routine appointment, not a detonator pressed under my life. "Any bleeding?" "No," I said quickly, then realized I'd spoken too fast, too desperate. The doctor didn't react. He simply stepped toward a small table that had been arranged with a neat cloth, an unopened medical bag, a tray of instruments that looked too clean to be real. "Sit," he instructed, gesturing to a cushioned chaise near the fireplace. I hesitated. Luciano's voice came low. "Lena." Not a threat. A reminder, we don't have time for this. I moved. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I sat, hands clenched in my lap, trying to breathe normally while my pulse hammered like a siren. Luciano didn't sit. He stayed standing, near the door, arms folded, posture calm, but his eyes never left me, like a guard dog, like a judge, like a man counting what mattered. Dr. Santoro opened his bag, unhurried. "Any nausea?" "Yes," I admitted. He nodded. "Morning or all day?" "All day lately." The doctor's mouth twitched, the closest thing to humor. "Your body is dramatic." I didn't laugh. Luciano didn't either. Dr. Santoro's eyes went to Luciano. "Is she under stress?" Luciano's gaze didn't shift from me. "She's in this house." The doctor accepted that as an answer. Then he looked back at me. "Do you know your blood type?" I shook my head. He made a note. My stomach churned. "Do you have to?" "Yes," he said, gentle but firm. "I have to." Luciano's voice cut in, low. Explain. Dr. Santoro didn't look offended. He looked like he expected it. I can do a basic examination and take blood. I can confirm pregnancy and estimate gestational age. But for full certainty and imaging... Luciano's eyes narrowed. No clinics. Dr. Santoro nodded. Then we do what we can here, and we schedule an ultrasound at a private facility. One I trust. My mouth went dry. Ultrasound. Proof. A heartbeat on a screen that would take my secret and turn it into something no one could deny. I swallowed hard. If we go anywhere, Sophia will find out. Luciano's gaze flicked to my face, sharp. Sophia will find out eventually. Dr. Santoro's eyebrows lifted, subtle. And the father? Silence. My chest tightened. Luciano answered without hesitation. Me. The word hit my ribs like a stone. Dr. Santoro didn't blink. He simply nodded once, like he'd just been told the weather. My stomach rolled. Because the way Luciano said it wasn't casual. It was a claim, and it didn't matter whether I agreed yet. Dr. Santoro reached for gloves. Then we treat this as high risk, not medically, politically. My throat tightened. I'm not a political issue. Luciano's gaze burned. In my world, you are. The doctor gestured to me. Lie back. I stiffened. Here? Now. Yes, he said simply. My hands trembled as I leaned back on the chaise. The fabric felt too luxurious for how exposed I suddenly felt. My dress rode up slightly. My skin prickled with humiliation. Luciano's eyes dropped to where my knees showed. A muscle in his jaw jumped. He didn't look away. He didn't soften it. He simply watched, as if witnessing what was happening to me was his responsibility. Dr. Santoro's hands were professional, efficient. He pressed gently against my lower abdomen, asked questions, listened to my breathing. I tried to stare at the ceiling and think of anything else, but my body betrayed me. A small wave of dizziness, a tiny cramp, a flutter of panic, and underneath it all, the sharp awareness that Luciano was here, watching every reaction like he was memorizing me. Dr. Santoro lifted his head. Pain? No, I whispered. He nodded. Good. He moved to the table, prepared a needle. I flinched at the sight. Luciano's voice came quiet. Hold still. I snapped my eyes to him. You don't get to tell me to. Luciano stepped forward, not fast, not aggressive, just close enough that his shadow fell over me. He didn't touch me. Instead, he lowered his voice so only I could hear. Don't fight the doctor, Lena. Fight your fear. My throat tightened, because the thing that made my eyes burn wasn't the needle. It was the fact that Luciano understood fear like he'd lived inside it. I turned my head away and offered my arm. Dr. Santoro took blood. Quick, clean, efficient. My stomach churned anyway. Then the doctor pressed gauze to my skin and taped it down. There. Done. I exhaled shakily. Luciano didn't move back. He watched my face. Breathe. I hated that he noticed everything. I breathed. Dr. Santoro sealed the vials, making notes. I'll run this with a private lab. Discreet. Results within hours. Hours. Not days. Not weeks. The speed of it made my skin crawl. Luciano nodded once. Good. Dr. Santoro glanced between us, eyes sharp. She needs rest, food, hydration, and reduced stress. Luciano's mouth curved faintly, humorless. You're asking for miracles. The doctor didn't smile. I'm asking for compliance. Luciano's gaze flicked to me again. She'll comply. My chest tightened at the assumption. I pushed myself upright, smoothing my dress with shaky fingers. I'm not. A knock sounded at the door. Every muscle in my body went tight. Luciano's head turned slightly. Who? A voice, female, sweet as poison, drifted through the wood. Luciano? It's Sophia. My stomach dropped. I looked at Luciano, panic flaring. She followed. Luciano didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed, like Sophia was a fly that didn't know when to die. He didn't open the door. He didn't answer right away. Sophia's voice again, still sweet, still sharp around the edges. Mama said you went into the blue parlor. I thought you might want coffee. My heart hammered. Coffee. A reason. A disguise. She didn't know for sure, but she was circling. Luciano's voice came calm and deadly. Go away. Silence. Then Sophia laughed lightly. Don't be rude. I'm your fiancé. The word fiancé made my stomach twist. Luciano's gaze flicked to me, brief, heavy. Then he moved to the door and opened it just enough to show himself. Not enough to show me. Not enough to show the doctor. Sophia stood in the hallway holding a silver tray, smiling like she belonged there. Her eyes tried to look past him. Luciano's body blocked the view. Luciano, Sophia purred. You disappeared. Luciano didn't move. I'm working. Sophia blinked. Working? In a parlor? Luciano's gaze went flat. Yes. Sophia's smile tightened, but she kept the sweetness. Can I come in? Luciano's voice didn't rise. No. Sophia's eyes flashed. Why not? Luciano leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice just enough to make it private while still being a warning. Because I said no. Silence snapped tight. Sophia's fingers tightened on the tray. Is Lena in there? I stopped breathing. Luciano didn't hesitate. Yes. My pulse stuttered. Sophia's eyes widened a fraction. Why? Luciano's gaze didn't shift. Because I told her to be. Sophia's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her smile turned sharp. Luciano, this is inappropriate. Luciano's voice went quiet, lethal. You're not in a position to tell me what's appropriate. Sophia's cheeks flushed. I'm your future wife. Luciano's eyes narrowed. You're a contract. The words hit the hallway like a slap. Even from inside, I felt it. Sophia's pride cracking. She forced a laugh. You don't mean that. Luciano's tone didn't change. I mean exactly what I say. Sophia's eyes burned. Then why am I here? Luciano leaned closer, his voice dropping lower. To look pretty in public while I keep your family alive. Silence. Then Sophia's smile returned, wider, brighter, more desperate. Luciano, she said softly, if there's something you need, I can. Luciano cut her off. Go. Sophia stared. Luciano's voice sharpened a fraction. Now. Sophia's gaze flicked over his shoulder again, trying to catch a glimpse of me. She didn't get it. Luciano's body was a wall. Her smile trembled, then steadied into something ugly. As you wish, Sophia said sweetly. But don't forget, Luciano, I'm very good at finding out what people hide. Then she turned and walked away. Her heels clicked down the corridor like a promise. Luciano closed the door. He stood there for a beat, back to me, like he was absorbing the irritant and deciding whether to crush it. Then he turned, and his eyes landed on me with a force that made my throat tighten. She's going to dig, I whispered. Luciano's jaw flexed. Let her. I shook my head. You don't understand her. Luciano stepped closer, gaze steady. I understand her perfectly. His voice went lower. She wants control. She wants status. She wants the story to center her. I swallowed, and it doesn't. Luciano's eyes dipped briefly to my stomach, then returned to my face. No, he murmured. It doesn't. The room felt too small. Dr. Santoro cleared his throat politely. Don Luciano, I'll go. Luciano nodded once. My men will escort you. The doctor packed his bag with quiet efficiency, then gave me one final, measured look. Not pity, not warmth. A warning. Eat, he said simply, and stop letting fear starve you. Then he left, the door shut, and suddenly it was just me and Luciano. The air changed. It got heavier, more intimate, more dangerous. Luciano moved to the window, looking out as if he could see threats through walls. I stayed near the chaise, arms wrapped around myself. My voice came out small despite my effort. You didn't have to tell her I was in here. Luciano's gaze stayed outside. I don't lie for convenience. I huffed a shaky laugh. You lie every time you call this protection. Luciano's head turned slightly. You want to be protected or not? I swallowed, anger rising. I want to breathe without someone deciding every step I take. Luciano's eyes finally met mine, sharp. Then stop living in a house that sells you. The words hit like a punch. I flinched. This is my family. Luciano's voice went quiet. Your family is a leash. Tears stung my eyes, rage tears, not sadness. You don't get to talk about them like that. Luciano took one step closer. I get to talk about reality however I want. I lifted my chin, defiant even as my hands trembled. And what's reality, Luciano? That you can marry my sister and keep me on the side like a secret? His gaze darkened. Is that what you think this is? I laughed once, bitter. What else could it be? Luciano closed the distance until he was in front of me, close enough to make my pulse trip over itself. He didn't touch me. He held himself back like restraint was a habit carved into bone. You're not a secret, he said softly. You're a crisis. The bluntness stole my breath. Luciano's eyes didn't blink. You think my enemies won't use you? You think your sister won't? Your father? I whispered, so I'm just leverage. Luciano's gaze sharpened. No. His voice dropped lower, rougher around the edges. You're mine. The word hit me like a brand all over again. I shook my head, voice breaking. Don't. Luciano leaned in, just slightly, and his voice turned into something that made my skin prickle. I'm not claiming you to hurt you, he murmured. I'm claiming you so no one else can. My throat tightened. That's not better. Luciano's gaze held mine. It is in my world. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe through the panic. And what about my world? Luciano's mouth curved faintly, humorless. Your world is ending. The words made my stomach twist. I whispered, "You're cruel." Luciano's gaze didn't soften. "I'm honest." A beat. Then, quieter, so quiet it felt like confession. He added, "Cruel would be letting them take you." The room went still, because for the first time I saw it. Not tenderness, not romance. Something darker and more dangerous. A man who had decided I mattered. A man like Luciano Greco didn't decide that lightly. And once he decided, he didn't let go. My voice came out shaky. "What happens when the test comes back?" Luciano's gaze dropped to my stomach again, slower this time. "Then we move." "Move where?" Luciano's eyes lifted. "Somewhere your sister can't reach you." My chest tightened. "She'll know. She'll tell my mother, my father." Luciano cut me off. "I don't care." I stared at him, stunned. Luciano's voice stayed calm. "Let them scream. Let them threaten. Let them beg. None of them matter more than what you're carrying." My throat burned. "You talk about my baby like a territory." Luciano stepped closer again, and this time his hand lifted, not to my stomach, to my cheek. His thumb brushed beneath my eye, so gentle it made my chest ache in a way I didn't trust. "Don't confuse my language for my intent," he murmured. "I don't have soft words, but I know what that heartbeat means." My breath hitched. His gaze dropped to my mouth, brief, dangerous, then returned to my eyes. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore." The words hit me harder than his threats ever had, because I wanted to believe them, and wanting was the most dangerous thing in a house full of knives. A sharp sound outside, raised voices, made my whole body tense. Luciano's head turned toward the door. Sophia's voice, faint through the hall, sharp and furious. "I want to know what's happening." My mother's voice responded tighter. "Sophia, calm down." Sophia snapped. "No, he's with her, again, and you're acting like it's normal." My stomach dropped. Luciano's jaw tightened. Then he looked back at me and said, calm as if the house wasn't catching fire, "Eat something." I stared. "Now?" Luciano's mouth curved faintly. "Yes, now, because you're going to need strength." "For what?" Luciano's eyes went flat, lethal. "For the war your sister is about to start." Somewhere in this house, Sophia was sharpening her smile into a weapon, and Luciano Greco was already deciding where to bury the bodies. I learned something in the first hour after Sophia decided she was at war with me. My sister didn't explode. She performed. She didn't scream until witnesses were in place. She didn't accuse until she had an audience hungry enough to believe her. She didn't strike until she was sure the bruise would show. And Luciano Greco, standing in my family's hallway like a verdict, was the only thing keeping her from drawing blood with her bare hands. I heard her before I saw her. That voice, sharp with sweetness, carried through the corridor like a knife wrapped in lace. "I want to know what's happening." My mother's tone was strained, too bright, like she was trying to tape the house back together with manners. "Sophia, calm down." "No," Sophia snapped. "He's with her." "Again, and you're acting like it's normal." My stomach tightened so hard I thought I might be sick again. Luciano didn't move toward the door. He didn't flinch. He just looked at me, calm as a gun on a table. "You're going to eat," he repeated. I stared at him, disbelieving. "Do you have any idea what she's about to do?" Luciano's eyes were flat and unbothered. "Yes." "And you're worried about toast?" Luciano's mouth twitched, almost amused. "I'm worried about you fainting again when the lies start flying." The words hit too close to truth. I hated him for being right. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Luciano glanced at the screen. Something in his gaze changed, tightened. My pulse jumped. "What is it?" He didn't answer immediately. He walked to the side table, lifted the receiver of the old house phone, because of course my mother still insisted on landlines, as if it made us classy instead of paranoid. "Speak," Luciano said. A voice came through. Low, male, professional. Dr. Santoro. Luciano listened without expression. And as he listened, the room got colder. I stood frozen, hands clenched, watching the side of his face. Sharp jaw, controlled breathing, eyes like carved stone. He said only 2 words. "Understood." He hung up. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of meaning. I swallowed. "What did he say?" Luciano turned to me, and for a moment, just a moment, something flickered behind his control. Not softness, not tenderness, something fierce and private. "Positive," he said. My breath caught. "I already told you." "Not that." His gaze dropped, brief, heavy to my stomach. "It's viable." Viable. The word shouldn't have made my eyes burn, but it did, because it made it real in a way my own fear hadn't allowed. My throat tightened. So what now? Luciano stepped closer, voice calm and absolute. Now I move you. My stomach dropped. Move me where? A safe house. I shook my head fast, panic rising. I can't just disappear. My mother. Your mother will survive, Luciano cut in, tone flat. My father will negotiate. Luciano's eyes sharpened. He always does. And Sophia, Luciano's mouth curved faintly humorless, will scream. Good. My chest tightened. You're not listening. She'll tell everyone. She'll make sure the whole city thinks I... Luciano took one more step, close enough that his presence pressed against my ribs. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. Let her talk, he murmured. Words don't kill you. I stared at him, shaking. But they can. Luciano's gaze held mine, unblinking. Not if you stop letting them. I wanted to hate him. Instead, a traitorous wave of relief flickered through me at the thought of leaving this house, leaving my mother's eyes, my father's deals, Sophia's smile. And that relief terrified me more than anything, because it meant part of me already believed Luciano was safer than my own blood. A sharp knock hit the door again. Harder this time. Not polite. Insistent. Sophia's voice cut through. Luciano in the door. Luciano didn't move. I whispered, She's going to come in. Luciano's gaze slid to the door. No, she's not. Another knock, followed by the rattle of the handle. My stomach clenched. Luciano lifted his voice just enough to carry. Sophia. Her voice snapped back, furious sweetness. You can't lock me out of my own house. Luciano's tone stayed calm. This isn't your house. Silence, then her voice, lower and more dangerous. Open the door. Luciano looked at me once like a final warning. Then he walked to the door and opened it. Sophia stood there with my mother behind her, and two of our staff lingering at the end of the corridor pretending not to listen while listening to everything. Sophia's eyes went straight past Luciano, searching, hunting. They landed on me, and the way her expression tightened told me she'd already decided the story. I was the villain, she was the victim. Luciano was the prize. Lena, Sophia said, voice syrupy. Are you feeling better? My jaw clenched. Yes. Sophia's gaze slid over my face, my posture, my hands. Good, because you've been monopolizing Luciano. Luciano's voice cut in, flat. Say what you came to say. Sophia blinked, surprised by the dismissal. Then she smiled wider, brighter, like she could outshine humiliation. I came to make sure everything is appropriate. She stepped forward. Luciano shifted slightly, just enough to block her path. Sophia's smile twitched. Luciano, don't be ridiculous. Luciano's eyes didn't soften. I'm not. My mother's voice slipped in, tight and warning. Sophia ignored her. My sister has been sick for days, and suddenly you're taking private meetings with her, private rooms, closed doors. Her eyes glittered. It looks bad. Luciano's expression didn't change. For whom? Sophia's mouth tightened. For me. Luciano's gaze went cold. You don't get to decide what looks bad for you. You get to behave. The insult hit like a slap. My mother sucked in a breath. Sophia's cheeks flushed, then smoothed into that terrifying calm she used when she wanted to hurt someone properly. She turned her eyes back to me, voice gentle. Lena, tell them, why has Luciano been so invested in you? My stomach rolled. I kept my expression blank. I don't know what you mean. Sophia's smile sharpened. Don't lie. Luciano's gaze flicked to Sophia. Warning. Careful. Sophia laughed lightly. Fake. I'm being careful. I'm being a good fiancé. I'm protecting the alliance. Her eyes flicked down, brief, calculating, then back up, bright. Unless, Sophia murmured, there's something you're hiding. My throat tightened. My mother's eyes snapped to me, narrow. Lena? The room tilted. This was what Luciano meant. The lies starting to fly, the hunger in their eyes. Sophia tilted her head. It would be so tragic if something happened to the alliance because Lena couldn't keep herself under control. I felt heat rush up my throat. You're implying. I'm not implying anything, Sophia said sweetly. I'm asking. Luciano's voice cut through, calm and lethal. You're accusing. Sophia turned her attention to him, lashes fluttering. Luciano, I'm your future wife. I deserve transparency. Luciano's mouth barely moved. You deserve what you earn. Sophia's smile wavered. And what has Lena earned? Luciano's gaze slid to me, brief, heavy. Then he said, so quiet it cracked the hallway. More than you. Silence snapped tight. My mother's face went pale. Sophia froze, as if her brain had stalled on the idea of not being the chosen one. Then her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Luciano didn't answer her directly. He looked at my mother instead. Signora DeSantis, your daughter needs rest. My mother blinked. Rest? Luciano's voice stayed calm. She's leaving this house tonight. My stomach dropped. Sophia's head jerked back. Leaving? My mother's voice sharpened. Leaving where? Luciano didn't flinch. With me? The world stopped. It was like a gunshot in a ballroom. Everyone heard it. Everyone pretended they didn't, but nobody could deny the echo. My mother's eyes widened, horrified. That's impossible. Sophia's mouth parted, then curled into something ugly. No, absolutely not. Luciano's gaze returned to Sophia, cold. Watch your tone. Sophia stepped forward anyway, past my mother, right up to Luciano like she was too proud to feel fear. You're engaged to me, she hissed softly, finally dropping the performance. You can't take my sister. Luciano's voice was quiet. I can take whoever I want. Sophia's eyes flashed. If you do this, my father will. Luciano interrupted without raising his voice. Your father will be grateful I don't kill him for the disrespect. My mother gasped. Sophia went still, and in that stillness, I saw it. Her fear, quick and raw, buried under her pride. She swallowed it and smiled again, bright as broken glass. Fine, Sophia said sweetly, turning her eyes to my mother. If Luciano wants to take Lena, let him. My mother's face tightened. Sophia raised a hand, graceful. No, Mama, let's be reasonable. She turned back to Luciano, smiling wide. But if she leaves, the city will talk. People will assume she's your mistress. My skin went cold. Sophia leaned in, voice soft, cruel. And if the city talks, the alliance gets dirty. Your reputation gets dirty. I get dirty. Luciano's gaze didn't change. Your problem. Sophia's smile widened. Unless Lena is leaving for a reason. My pulse hammered. Sophia's eyes slid down again, this time slower, deliberate, like she was hunting for a bulge that wasn't there yet. Then she looked back up at my face and smiled like she'd tasted blood. You're pregnant, Sophia whispered. The words hit the air like a match. My mother made a strangled sound. What? My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. Sophia's voice grew louder, the performance returning instantly. Perfect timing, perfect poison. That's why she's sick. That's why Luciano keeps pulling her into private rooms, she laughed, bright and sharp. How scandalous. My mother turned to me, face flushing with rage and disbelief. Lena, is that true? I couldn't speak. Luciano moved. One step, that was all. But it changed everything. He positioned himself slightly in front of me, not shielding me gently, but placing his body as a warning line. My mother's eyes flicked to him, stunned. Luciano? Luciano's voice stayed calm. Yes. My mother's lips trembled. Yes, what? Luciano's gaze didn't leave her. She's pregnant. My heart stopped. Sophia's eyes widened. She'd expected me to crumble, expected my mother to crush me, expected Luciano to deny. She hadn't expected him to confirm. My mother swayed slightly like the floor had shifted under her. With, her voice cracked, with whose child? Silence. Luciano didn't hesitate. Mine, he said. The word detonated. Sophia's face went white. My mother let out a sound between a sob and a gasp, hand flying to her chest. No, no. Sophia's voice came out strangled. Luciano. Luciano's eyes snapped to her, sharp enough to cut. You will be silent. Sophia shook her head, fury rising. You can't humiliate me like this. Luciano's voice stayed quiet. I can do worse. My mother looked like she might collapse. Lena, her eyes found mine, wet with rage and something like grief. How could you? The shame hit so fast my vision blurred. Because no matter what my family was, no matter what Sophia was, I was still their daughter. Still trained to feel guilt like a reflex. I whispered, I didn't plan. Sophia laughed, sudden and hysterical. Oh, she didn't plan it? She just fell onto the Dons. Luciano moved so fast, Sophia flinched. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. He leaned in, voice low enough that it was meant only for her, but everyone heard it anyway because the hallway had gone dead silent. Say one more word, Luciano murmured, and I will show you what humiliation actually looks like. Sophia swallowed hard. For the first time since he arrived, she looked at him like she finally understood what she'd agreed to marry. A monster in a suit. A king without mercy, and he was standing in front of me. My mother's voice broke, shaking. Luciano, what are you saying? You came here to marry Sophia. Luciano's gaze slid to my mother. I came here to secure an alliance. And the alliance, my mother's voice rose, was Sophia. Luciano's expression didn't change. Plans evolve. Sophia made a choked sound. You're discarding me. Luciano's eyes went flat. You were never the point. You were the packaging. Sophia recoiled like he'd slapped her. My stomach twisted, horror and sick satisfaction tangling together. I didn't want Sophia destroyed, but I did want her to stop hurting me. Luciano turned slightly toward me then, and his voice dropped, private in a public hallway. "You're coming with me," he said. I stared at him, shaking. "Luciano," my mother stepped forward, panic rising. No, you can't just take her." Luciano's gaze lifted to my mother, calm. "I can." My mother's eyes flashed. "She's my daughter." Luciano's voice stayed level. "She's carrying my heir." The word heir made my knees go weak. Sophia's voice cracked, furious and pleading at once. "This will ruin me." Luciano didn't look at her. "Then you should have thought about that before you tried to ruin her." Sophia froze, because he saw it. He'd been watching her, cataloging her cruelty, measuring her hunger, and now he'd decided she was a threat. Luciano glanced over his shoulder. One of his men appeared instantly, as if summoned by the movement. "Pack her essentials," Luciano ordered. 10 minutes. My stomach dropped. 10. Luciano's gaze snapped back to me, calm and unyielding. 10. My mother's voice rose, sharp with desperation. "Luciano, please, we can talk, we can fix this." Luciano's eyes didn't soften. "This isn't broken, this is revealed." My mother looked at me again, tears in her eyes now. "Lena, say something." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because what could I say? Sorry, I let myself want something once. Sorry, I got pregnant with the wrong man's child. Sorry, my sister is trying to carve me open with words and you never protected me from her. Luciano's hand touched my elbow, firm, not gentle. A directive, a claim. My skin prickled. Sophia's voice came out low, shaking with rage. "If you take her, Luciano, I swear." Luciano turned his head just enough to look at her, and the look he gave her was not a warning. It was a promise. "Swear," he said quietly, "and then watch how little it matters." Sophia went silent. Luciano guided me just one step, toward the room, and as we moved I heard something else. Not Sophia. Not my mother. A sharp, distant sound from outside. A crack. Then another. Like firecrackers, like a car backfiring. Like Luciano's entire body went still. His head snapped toward the window at the end of the hall. His guard's hand went to his jacket, and the Greco men in the corridor moved as one. Not panicked, trained, danger recognized. Luciano's voice turned into pure command. "Down." My heart jumped. "What?" "Down, Lena." I dropped without thinking, knees hitting the runner, like hands bracing the floor. A third crack split the air, louder. Glass shattered somewhere downstairs. My mother screamed. Sophia shrieked. And Luciano Greco, calm as death, looked straight at me from where he stood over my crouched body and said, "Low and lethal. They found you." My sister had just exposed my secret, and now someone outside this house wanted to collect it in blood. Are you still with me? If yes, like, subscribe, and comment, "They found her," so I know to continue. Do you want Luciano to move Lena immediately to the safe house, or fight the attack inside the family mansion first? Answer in the comments. I hit the floor so hard my knees barked pain up my thighs. For a split second I thought I'd misheard him. They found you, because it didn't make sense. I was in my father's mansion, behind gates, behind marble and money and the illusion of safety. Then another crack tore through the air and the chandelier shuddered like it had a heartbeat. Luciano didn't flinch. His men did not panic. They moved. A Greco guard stepped into the hall with his body angled toward the window, gun already drawn, eyes scanning like the walls were transparent. Another grabbed my mother's elbow and shoved her behind a pillar with brisk, practiced force. My mother's scream died into a shocked gasp. Sophia, beautiful, furious Sophia, stood frozen in the center of the hallway like she couldn't believe danger would interrupt her performance. "Get down," one of the men barked. Sophia didn't, because Sophia had never been trained to survive, only to be admired. A sharp burst came from downstairs, too close, too loud, followed by glass shattering again. Something heavy crashed. Voices rose from the foyer, thick and urgent. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a warning shot in the street. This was an intrusion. This was a message written in violence. Luciano's hand clamped around my upper arm, firm, anchoring. He hauled me up from the runner like I weighed nothing. "Stay behind me," he said. My breath hitched. "My mother, she'll live," he cut in, and his voice was so flat it made my skin go cold. "You need to live." His gaze flicked once toward Sophia. It wasn't hatred. It was a silent verdict. "Look what you did." Sophia's lips parted, shock and rage tangled together. "Luciano?" He didn't let her finish. He turned his head just enough to speak to his men. "2 to the front, 1 to the back stairs. Lock this corridor down. They scattered like a machine coming alive. Luciano pulled me against his side and moved us toward the nearest doorway, one of the sitting rooms, fast but controlled, keeping his body between me and the hallway. A bullet punched through something downstairs again, wood splintering, a sharp crack like a whip. My stomach lurched. I clutched his sleeve with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. "You said they found me," I whispered. Luciano pushed the sitting room door open and shoved me inside. They did. He stepped in after me and shut the door. Not to hide, to control angles. His guard took position outside. I heard the click of a lock and the soft shift of footsteps. Inside, the room was too bright, too normal. Velvet, gold-framed portraits, a vase of flowers my mother had arranged for Luciano's arrival. The flowers looked obscene now, pretty things pretending nothing could bleed in this house. Luciano turned to me, eyes hard. "Listen to me." I swallowed. "I'm listening." "You stay in this room until I come back," he said. "If anyone opens that door, anyone, you scream and you get behind the sofa." My heart hammered. "What about Sophia? My mother?" Luciano's jaw flexed. "You care too much about people who never protected you." The words hit like a slap I didn't see coming. I flinched. Then anger rose, hot and shaky. "You don't get to talk about them like—" Luciano stepped closer and his voice dropped low enough it felt like it was meant only for my bones. "I get to talk about reality," he said. "Reality is this. Someone came to your father's house to reach you." I swallowed hard. "Why?" Luciano's gaze flicked to my stomach. "Because you're carrying my heir." My breath caught. He was so calm saying it, like it was a fact as ordinary as weather. I whispered, "Who would do this?" Luciano's eyes went flat. "Someone who thinks killing a future will weaken me." A chill crawled up my spine. I forced my voice to work. "So this is because of you." Luciano didn't deny it. He simply looked at me with that cruel honesty again. "Yes," he said, "and because of your sister's mouth." As if summoned by the accusation, Sophia's shriek cut through the corridor outside, loud enough to slice the walls. "This is your fault," she screamed. At me, at him, at the universe. "You ruined everything." Then my mother's voice, broken and frantic. "Sophia, stop, stop." A guard barked something harsh. Sophia answered with another furious burst. Luciano's eyes closed for a half-second, like he was counting to 10 in a language made of gunpowder. Then he opened them and looked at me like a man making a decision he would not undo. "You're leaving," he said. My stomach dropped. "Now?" "Yes," Luciano replied. "Now." A deep, heavy thud sounded downstairs, like a door slammed open with force. Multiple footsteps, a harsh male shout, a reply in another voice. Not our staff, not my father, outside voices. My pulse sprinted. Luciano turned toward the window, listening. Then he glanced at the door, calculating. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small phone, different from the one he'd been using earlier. He tapped once. "Phase 2, he said into it. "She's exposed. Move the car." A pause. His jaw tightened. Then, "No, not the front." He listened again, eyes narrowing. "Back service drive," he said. 2 cars, staggered. We're going out through the laundry corridor." He hung up, slid the phone away. I stared at him. "You planned this." Luciano's gaze locked on mine. "I planned for everything." My throat tightened. "Even for my sister accusing me?" Luciano's mouth curved faintly, humorless, especially that. My breath shook out of me. "You knew she'd figure it out." "I knew she'd smell it," he corrected. "And I knew she'd bite." Another crack downstairs, closer. The sound of someone yelling in pain. A crash of furniture. I flinched hard. Luciano moved instantly, gripping my shoulders. "Look at me." I forced my eyes up. His gaze held mine with brutal steadiness. "You are not going to faint," he said. "You are not going to freeze. You're going to do exactly what I tell you. Do you understand?" My voice came out small, furious. "I'm not one of your soldiers." Luciano's thumb brushed once over my shoulder, almost soothing, almost tender, almost. "No," he murmured. "You're more important." It was the worst thing he could have said because it made my chest hurt in a way I didn't want to acknowledge. He released me and went to the door. He opened it a crack, spoke to the guard in rapid Italian, then shut it again. "Come," he ordered, already moving. I followed because my body understood something my pride didn't. Right now, survival was not a debate. We slipped out into the corridor like ghosts. The hallway was chaos now, my mother crying behind a marble column, Sophia pacing like a caged thing, my father's study door cracked open with men shouting behind it. The Greco guards had repositioned, 2 at the stairs, 1 near the windows, 1 by the back passage. And Luciano was a dark center of gravity the house was forced to orbit. Sophia saw us instantly. Her eyes went wide, her mouth twisted. No. She lunged forward. Not elegant, not graceful, desperate. Luciano's guard stepped between them, palm out, stopping Sophia like she'd hit a wall. Sophia shrieked. Move. The guard didn't. Sophia's gaze locked on Luciano. You're taking her. Luciano didn't slow. Yes. Sophia's voice cracked. You can't. You came for me. Luciano's gaze slid to her for one cold beat. I came for an alliance. Sophia's laugh was hysterical. And I'm the alliance. Luciano's voice didn't change. You were the cover. Sophia flinched like she'd been slapped again. My mother stumbled forward, eyes wet, face pale. Luciano, please, she's my daughter. Luciano didn't look at my mother. He looked at my father, who had emerged at the end of the corridor with 2 men behind him, face drawn tight with fury and fear. Don Greco, my father said, voice hard. If you take her. Luciano cut him off without even raising his voice. If I take her, he said, you keep breathing. My father's jaw clenched. Men are in my house. Luciano's gaze went distant, listening to the sounds downstairs. Men are in your house because you don't know how to defend it. My father's eyes flashed. This is not. A loud shout from downstairs silenced him. Then a heavy crash. Sophia screamed again. Luciano didn't react to the screaming. He reacted to the sound of approaching footsteps, fast, heavy, multiple. His head snapped to the staircase. He shoved me behind him, hand gripping my wrist hard enough to hurt. Move, he said. We moved. Down the back corridor, away from the grand staircase, away from marble and chandeliers and the illusion of safety. Behind us, Sophia's voice rose, sharp and panicked. Lena, you did this! You! Luciano turned his head just enough to speak without stopping. Close her mouth, he ordered. A guard's voice responded, calm. See, Don. Sophia's words cut off abruptly, muffled, furious. My stomach rolled. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The laundry corridor was narrow and dim, lined with shelves of linens and cleaning supplies. The air smelled like detergent and old steam. Luciano didn't slow. He dragged me through the tight space, his men surrounding us like a moving shield. I heard a scuffle behind, boots, a grunt, the slam of a door. Then from the other end of the corridor another sound, a knock, fast, coded. A Greco guard opened the service exit. Night air rushed in. Rain had started, fine and cold, misting the world into silver. 2 black cars waited by the service drive, engines running. Headlights off. Luciano shoved me toward the nearest back door. Get in. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, because getting into that car felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Luciano's voice dropped. Lena. My name snapped me back into motion. I climbed in. The interior smelled like leather and clean smoke. The back seat was wide, pristine, too expensive for a getaway. Luciano slid in after me, and the door shut with a heavy thud that sounded like a seal. The driver didn't ask. He pulled away immediately. The second car followed, keeping distance. My heart hammered so hard it made my vision blur at the edges. I turned to Luciano, voice trembling. Are they still in the house? Luciano stared out the window, eyes scanning darkness. Yes. Are my parents safe? Luciano's jaw tightened. Your father will survive. Your mother will cry. Your sister will rage. None of that matters more than you staying alive. The bluntness made my throat burn. You keep saying that like I'm... Luciano's gaze flicked to me. Like you're what? I swallowed. Like I'm something you own. Luciano's mouth barely moved. You're something I protect. That's just ownership with better words, I snapped. Luciano's gaze held mine in the dim car light. Then he leaned closer, slow, controlled, until his voice was low enough to feel like a private threat. I'm not using better words, he said. I'm using accurate ones. My breath hitched. He didn't touch me, but his presence pressed into my space, crowding the air. You can hate me, he murmured, after you're safe. I whispered, I didn't ask for this. Luciano's gaze dropped briefly to my stomach, then back up. You didn't ask to be born into that house either, he said. But you were. And they trained you to apologize for surviving. Tears stung my eyes, furious and unwanted. I turned my face toward the window, blinking hard. Outside, the city slid past in dark streaks. Streetlights blurred into gold smears on wet pavement. Then, headlights flared behind us, bright, too close. The driver cursed under his breath. Luciano's posture changed instantly. Not panic, focus. His phone was in his hand before I even realized he'd moved. 3 cars, the driver said tightly. No plates. Luciano's voice was calm. Don't stop. The headlights behind swerved, closing in. My stomach dropped. Are they following us? Luciano's gaze stayed forward. Yes. The driver took a turn hard enough to shove me into the seat. I grabbed the leather, breath breaking. Luciano's hand shot out, not to hold me like comfort, but to brace me, palm firm against my shoulder as the car threw itself around another corner. Stay down, he ordered. I stared at him. What? Down, Lena. I dropped, sliding lower in the seat as if shrinking could save me. The car surged. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. A horn blared. Somewhere behind us, a car engine roared like an animal. Luciano spoke into his phone in rapid Italian, voice clipped. Box them out. No gunfire in public unless you have to. Unless you have to. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a scare. This was a hunt. A sudden thud rocked the car, like something hit the rear bumper. I gasped. Luciano's hand tightened on my shoulder. Breathe. My voice came out ragged. Who are they? Luciano's eyes narrowed at the road. Not your sister's enemies. That answer terrified me more than any name, because it meant this wasn't DeSantis' business. This was Greco business, and I was at the center of it. The second car behind us, a Greco tail, swerved wide, cutting between us and the pursuing headlights. I heard the screech of tires, the deep boom of impact. My stomach flipped. Luciano didn't look back. He simply said, voice low and lethal, good. The driver accelerated, rain streaking across the windows. Then Luciano turned his head toward me, finally, and the look in his eyes made my throat tighten. Not calm, not cold. Something fierce. Something afraid, but buried under control, so deep it barely showed. If you ever doubt what you are to me, he murmured, remember this. I swallowed hard. What? Luciano's voice was quiet as a vow. They don't chase things that don't matter. We didn't slow until the city thinned and the streets grew quieter, darker, more industrial. The car turned through a gate I didn't recognize. No sign, no lights, just a silent opening in a high wall. Inside, a compound waited. Low buildings, security cameras, men moving like shadows, a safe house, a fortress. The car rolled to a stop. Luciano opened his door and got out first. He came around to my side and opened my door. Cold air rushed in. He offered his hand. Not gentle, not romantic. A directive disguised as help. I stared at it for half a beat. Then I took it, because my legs were shaking, because the night felt too big, because he was the only solid thing in it. Luciano pulled me out and guided me inside without hesitation. As we crossed the threshold, he leaned down and murmured near my ear, voice low enough it felt like confession, this is where you live now. My breath caught. Until when? Luciano's hand tightened around mine. Until the world stops trying to take you from me, he said. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the world would have to bleed to make that happen. The safe house door closed behind me like a new fate, and Luciano Greco didn't look like a man who planned to lose. The safe house didn't feel like safety. It felt like a place designed for men who expected blood on the floor and wanted it easy to clean. High walls, security cameras that tracked movement with quiet precision, men positioned in corners like they were part of the architecture. The air smelled of rain and metal and something faintly antiseptic, like the building itself had been sterilized against human softness. Luciano led me down a corridor lit by warm sconces that tried too hard to make the place seem livable. The floors were dark wood, polished to a mirror. The walls held abstract art, expensive, cold, meaningless. A home built for control, not comfort. This is where you live now, he'd said. And the worst part was how easily the words had slipped into my skin. I followed him into a suite at the end of the hall. He opened the door and stepped aside, letting me enter first. The room was large, too large, a king-size bed dressed in charcoal linen, a sitting area with a cream couch and a low-glass table, a dresser with no personal items, no photographs, no signs of a cage made of luxury. I turned slowly, taking it in, my breath shallow. So this is it. Luciano closed the door behind us. The sound was heavy. Final. This is a secured wing, he said. 2 exits, both monitored, no windows that open. I laughed once, short, bitter. How generous. Luciano's gaze flicked to me, unbothered. You'll be grateful later. I won't, I snapped. You don't get to drag me out of my house and call it protection. Luciano stepped closer, shrugging out of his coat with smooth control. It wasn't your house. It's my family's. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Your family served you to wolves. Heat surged behind my eyes. You don't get to talk about them like that. Luciano's gaze held mine. You want me to lie? I hated him for how calm he was, for how steady, for how he could say brutal truths like they were weather reports. I turned away, swallowing hard, and walked toward the couch as if putting distance between us could change reality. My body still felt shaken from the chase. My knees ached. My throat burned with unshed panic. I sat. Luciano didn't sit. He stood near the door like a guard who didn't trust the room, scanning corners out of habit. Then his eyes returned to me and stayed there. You need to eat, he said. I huffed a humorless laugh. You and food. Luciano's mouth twitched. You and refusing basic survival. I looked down at my hands in my lap, fingers twisting together. If I eat, I might throw up. Luciano's gaze softened by a fraction, not tenderness. Focus. Then you'll eat something bland, and if you throw up, you'll drink water, and you'll try again. I lifted my eyes, rage flickering. Do you hear yourself? You're giving orders like you matter, he cut in, voice quiet. The words landed wrong. Too intimate, too sharp. I swallowed. I matter because of what I'm carrying. Luciano stepped closer, slow. You matter because you're you. My breath caught. For a second, I didn't know what to do with that sentence. It didn't fit in my world. Men didn't say that to women like me unless they wanted something. And Luciano always wanted something. I shook my head, trying to anchor myself in anger. Then why are you engaged to my sister? Luciano's jaw tightened. Because I needed an alliance with your father's territory. And I was just, what? An accident? Luciano's eyes darkened. You were never an accident. The heat that surged through me was as dangerous as it was unwanted. I stood abruptly, pacing toward the dresser, needing motion, needing anything except the way his gaze pinned me like a hand. I don't understand, I said, voice cracking despite my effort. You disappear after that night. Months pass. You don't call. You don't send anyone. And then you show up to marry Sophia like I never existed. Luciano didn't answer immediately. He watched me pace, like he was letting my anger burn itself down to ash. When I turned back to him, breath sharp, he spoke. I did not disappear because I didn't want you, he said quietly. I froze. His voice stayed calm, but something deeper threaded through it, something rougher. I disappeared because I knew exactly what your family would do if they knew I wanted you. My chest tightened. They'd have celebrated. Luciano's gaze went flat. No, they'd have sold you harder. The words hit like a slap. I stared at him. That's not? It is? Luciano said. Your father would have used you to negotiate. Your mother would have dressed it up as destiny. Your sister would have smiled while she sharpened her knife. My stomach twisted because a part of me knew he was right. Luciano stepped closer, voice dropping. So I chose distance. I chose silence. I chose to let you think it was nothing, because nothing was safer than being mine. My throat burned. Safer for who? Luciano's gaze held mine. For you. The silence stretched. Then I whispered, and now? Luciano's mouth barely moved. Now you're carrying my heir, and the city has smelled it. There is no safe distance anymore. My hand slid unconsciously to my belly. The gesture was small, instinctive, protective. Luciano's eyes tracked it like it was a prayer. His voice softened, almost unwillingly. When you fainted, I felt it. I blinked. Felt what? Luciano's jaw flexed once. Fear. I stared at him, stunned. You don't get afraid. Luciano's gaze sharpened. I do. I just don't let it control me. He took one more step. Now he was close enough that I could see the tiny tension at the corner of his mouth, the restraint in his shoulders like he was holding back a storm. I thought I was too late, he murmured. My throat tightened. Too late for what? Luciano's voice dropped to something raw. To keep you from being touched by this. The words settled in my chest like weight. Because underneath his dominance, underneath his control, there was something else. A man who hated weakness, a man who had chosen me anyway. I should have felt relief. Instead, my fear sharpened. Luciano, I whispered, what are you going to do now? About Sophia? About my family? Luciano's gaze went cold again, mask snapping back in place. Sophia is not your concern. She's my sister. Luciano's mouth curved faintly. She tried to hand you to the wolves. She didn't know. She knew enough, Luciano cut in, voice flat, and she still chose to hurt you. I flinched. Luciano's gaze didn't soften. I will handle her. The way he said it made my stomach turn, not with disgust, with dread, because I believed him. I believed Luciano Greco had a handle that didn't involve mercy. I took a step back, needing space. I don't want her dead. Luciano's eyes narrowed. Did I say dead? I swallowed hard. You didn't have to. Luciano's gaze held mine. She will live, but she will learn. A shiver ran through me. He turned slightly, reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. He tapped once, spoke briefly in Italian, then looked back at me. Food is coming, he said. A nurse is coming, and an ultrasound appointment will be arranged. Private. Ultrasound, proof. My pulse jumped. No, not yet. Luciano's gaze sharpened. Yes. I shook my head, panic rising again. If there's proof, it spreads. Even if it's private, someone will know. Luciano stepped closer, voice low and absolute. Someone already knows. You think those men came to your father's house because they guessed? They came because they were told. My blood went cold. Told by who? I whispered. Luciano's gaze didn't blink. That's what I'm finding out. A knock came at the door. Luciano didn't startle. He moved with measured control and opened it. A woman stood there, late 30s, hair pulled back, wearing a simple black coat. She looked like a nurse, but the way her eyes scanned the hallway said she wasn't here just to take my vitals. Don Luciano, she said. I'm Rosa. Luciano nodded. Check her, then leave food. Rosa's gaze flicked to me with professional calm. Signorina. I swallowed. I'm fine. Rosa didn't react. She stepped in, closing the door gently behind her, and set a small medical bag on the table. Luciano stayed. I blinked. You're staying? Yes, Luciano said simply. Rosa glanced at him as if confirming, then proceeded without comment. Blood pressure. I sat stiffly while she wrapped the cuff around my arm. The tight squeeze made my pulse feel louder. Luciano watched the entire time, the eyes on my face, tracking reactions like he could control my body by looking hard enough. Rosa made notes, slightly elevated, likely stress. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Reduce it. Rosa's gaze flicked to him, then back to me. Hydration, small meals, rest. Luciano nodded like he'd already decided all of that. Rosa reached into her bag and pulled out a small packet. Prenatal vitamins. I'll leave them. The sight of them made my throat tighten. Tiny pills. Tiny proof that this wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. Rosa finished quickly. Efficient as a blade, she placed a covered tray on the table. Toast, broth, crackers, a glass of water. Then she looked at Luciano. Anything else? Luciano's gaze stayed on me. No. Rosa nodded once and left. The door clicked shut. Silence returned. The tray sat between us like an accusation. Luciano gestured toward it. Eat. I stared at the food. My stomach churned at the smell of broth, but hunger was there too, faint and aching. I hated that he was right about my body. I picked up a cracker and held it like it might bite me back. Luciano watched. I put it in my mouth, chewed slowly, swallowed. It stayed down. A tiny victory that felt humiliating because it was under his gaze. Luciano's voice came low. Good. I shot him a look. Don't praise me like I'm a pet. His mouth curved faintly. Then stop acting like you'd rather starve than let someone take care of you. The words hit harder than they should have, because they were true. Because I'd spent my entire life refusing care, because care always came with hooks. Luciano stepped closer, gaze steady. I'm going to give you rules. My stomach tightened. Of course you are. Luciano's tone didn't change. You won't leave this wing without a guard. You won't answer calls from your family. You won't go near windows when you're alone. You'll sleep. I laughed, sharp. And if I don't? Luciano leaned in slightly, voice quiet. Then I make you. My breath caught. He didn't say it like a threat for pleasure. He said it like a fact. My skin prickled. You can't force me to sleep. Luciano's gaze flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes. You'd be surprised what I can make you do. Heat flushed up my throat. Anger and something else I didn't want to name. I whispered, this isn't love. Luciano's expression didn't change. No. The bluntness jolted me. He added, quieter, not yet. My pulse stuttered. I stared at him, stunned. Luciano's gaze held mine like a lock. Love is earned. It's built. It's proven. His voice lowered. But possession, protection, those are immediate. My throat tightened. So I'm just... Luciano cut in, sharper. You're not just anything. A beat. Then his voice softened, barely. You're carrying my future. The words made my eyes sting again. I looked away fast, chewing another cracker to give my mouth something to do besides break. Luciano's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. The look on his face changed, coldening into something lethal. I froze. What is it? Luciano's eyes stayed on the screen for a long beat. Then he looked up at me, and the calm in his voice made my blood run colder than panic ever had. Sophia went public, he said. My stomach dropped. What? Luciano's thumb tapped the screen once, then he held the phone out. On the display, a photo, blurry, taken from far away, of me in the hallway at my father's house, crouched on the floor with my hand near my stomach. Luciano standing over me. A caption beneath it in Italian posted to some social page that thrived on scandal and bloodline gossip. DeSantis' second daughter caught with Greco Dawn. Is she pregnant? My lungs seized. I whispered, she posted that. Luciano's gaze was ice. Yes, my hands shook as I stared at the screen. How did she get it? Luciano's jaw tightened. Staff, security, someone sold it. My throat closed. She's going to ruin me. Luciano's eyes lifted to mine, calm as a gun on a table. She's going to try, he corrected. Then he stepped closer, voice low and absolute. And I'm going to ruin her first. My sister didn't just start a war, she lit the match in public. The safe house got quieter after Luciano said it. Not calmer, quieter in the way a room goes quiet when everyone senses something about to break. My lungs wouldn't work properly. I stared at his phone like the screen could bite me, like Sophia's caption could reach across the city and drag me back by the hair. Caught with Greco Dawn. Is she pregnant? It wasn't even the question that gutted me. It was the certainty underneath it. They didn't ask because they didn't know. They asked because they wanted the confirmation to taste sweeter. My fingers trembled in my lap. She's going to ruin me. Luciano's eyes were ice. She's going to try. Then, without rushing, he slipped the phone into his pocket like the scandal was a mosquito he'd already decided to crush. The casualness made my stomach twist. How can she do that? I whispered. How can she just post something like that and... Luciano's voice cut in, calm and lethal. Because your sister thinks attention is power. I swallowed hard. And you think power is what? Luciano's gaze locked on mine. Silence. My throat tightened. She just painted a target on me. Luciano stepped closer. She painted a target on herself. I forced my voice steady. What are you going to do? Luciano didn't answer immediately. He moved toward the door, tapped twice, coded, controlled. A guard opened it instantly. Bring me Marco, Luciano said. The guard nodded and disappeared. I stood up, panic buzzing under my skin. Who is Marco? Luciano's gaze flicked to me. My consigliere. My pulse jumped. Consigliere meant decisions. Final ones. Luciano turned back to me, posture still calm. Sit, I stared. No. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Lena. My spine stiffened. Stop saying my name like it's a leash. Luciano stepped in closer and his voice dropped to something that made my skin prickle. It is, he murmured. Right now. Rage surged, hot, trembling. You don't get to control me just because my sister is... Just because my sister is stupid, Luciano cut in flat, and just because you're pregnant. His gaze dipped to my stomach, then returned to my eyes. And just because I refuse to let anyone turn you into a headline and a body. My throat burned. He wasn't gentle, but he wasn't wrong. I sat because my legs were shaking and because fighting him felt like fighting a storm with bare hands. Luciano remained standing, a dark, still shape in the room. A knock came. The door opened. A man entered. Mid-40s, silver hair, eyes that missed nothing. He wore a suit like armor and carried a leather folio under his arm as if paperwork could stop bullets. He glanced at me once, quick, assessing, then bowed his head slightly to Luciano. Don Luciano, he said. Marco. Luciano's chin dipped in acknowledgement. Sophia posted. Marco's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. I saw, Luciano asked. How far did it spread? Marco opened the folio and pulled out his phone, tapping once. Fast. It's trending in the city channels, society pages. A few underworld accounts reposted it within minutes. My stomach dropped harder. Underworld accounts? Marco's gaze finally met mine, steady and unemotional. Mafia gossip travels faster than truth, Signorina. Luciano's voice was low. Who took the photo? Marco's eyes narrowed. We're tracing it. Likely staff. Possibly one of your father's security men. His gaze flicked to Luciano. Sophia's not smart enough to get that shot herself. Luciano's mouth curved faintly, humorless. No, she's just cruel enough to use it. Marco nodded once. What do you want? Luciano didn't hesitate. 2 options, public or private. My pulse stuttered. Marco watched Luciano carefully. Public humiliation stops her mouth. Private removal stops her reach. Luciano's gaze went cold. I want both. I stood so fast the couch creaked. No. Both men turned toward me at once. Luciano's eyes held mine. Sit down. I'm not sitting, I snapped, shaking. You can't destroy her. She's my sister. Marco's face stayed neutral, but his eyes measured my reaction like it was useful information. Luciano's voice was quiet. She just tried to destroy you. That doesn't mean you. My voice cracked. That doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want to her. Luciano stepped toward me, stopping close enough that I could feel the heat of him. In my world, he said, threats are removed. I'm not a threat, I whispered, because I didn't know what else to say. Luciano's gaze dropped to my stomach again. You are. The words hit like ice water. I swallowed hard. I don't want her dead. Marco's eyebrows lifted slightly at that. Luciano didn't blink. I didn't say dead, Luciano said. You didn't have to. Luciano's jaw flexed. Then, almost like he was choosing restraint because I'd asked, he exhaled slowly. Fine, he said. Not dead. My chest loosened by a fraction, then he added flat, not untouched. My stomach turned. Marco spoke calmly, as if negotiating market prices. We can break her credibility without blood. Luciano's gaze flicked to Marco. How? Marco opened the folio and slid a paper out, already prepared. Sophia has been contacting rival houses, fishing for leverage. We have messages, not enough to call it treason yet. Enough to smear her as unstable. My blood ran cold. She's been contacting rival houses? Luciano's voice stayed calm. Of course she has. Marco continued. We leak it through the same channels she used. Let the city decide she's desperate and dishonest. Then we tighten her access. Phones monitored, accounts frozen, invitations withdrawn. Luciano nodded once. And the DeSantis? Marco's eyes flicked to me, then back to Luciano. Your father will rage, then bargain. He'll accept compensation if it saves face. My throat tightened. Compensation for what? Luciano's gaze met mine. For losing the wedding. The words hit the room like a gunshot. My stomach lurched. You're calling it off. Luciano didn't hesitate. Yes, my chest squeezed. You can't. If you call it off, my father will. Your father will do what he always does. Luciano cut in. He will survive, I whispered. And Sophia? Luciano's voice went quiet. She'll learn what happens when she bites the wrong throat. I flinched. Marco cleared his throat delicately. There's another matter. Luciano's gaze sharpened. Speak. Marco tapped his phone again, then turned it slightly so Luciano could see. I couldn't see the screen, but I saw Luciano's expression change. Not panic. Focus. Sharp, lethal focus. What? I demanded, voice shaking. What is it? Luciano didn't look away from Marco. The attackers. Marco nodded. We found a plate from the car that hit our tail vehicle. It's connected to a shell company. Luciano's jaw tightened. Whose? Marco's eyes were cold. Romano. The name meant nothing to me. But the way Luciano went still told me it meant everything to him. Romano? Luciano repeated, voice low. Marco nodded once. Old enemy, old grievance. He wants a message delivered. My throat tightened. Delivered to who? Luciano finally looked at me, and the way his eyes held mine made me feel like the room had narrowed to a single line of fate. To me, he said. Through you. My skin went cold. Why? Luciano's voice was quiet. Because men like Romano don't believe in love, they believe in pressure points. Marco spoke with calm precision. If the city believes Lena is carrying your heir, the threat escalates. They'll try again. Harder. I couldn't breathe. I whispered, so Sophia's post. Luciano cut in, lit the fuse. Marco nodded. We need to control the narrative. Luciano's gaze sharpened. Then we will. I swallowed hard. How? Luciano's voice dropped into something that sounded like a plan and a promise at the same time. Tomorrow, he said, the city will see what I want it to see. My pulse stuttered. What does that mean? Luciano stepped closer, eyes burning with calm authority. It means Sophia doesn't get to tell your story. My throat tightened. And you do? Luciano's mouth barely moved. Yes. The audacity made rage flare again. I'm not a story. Luciano's gaze held mine. In my world, you are. Then his voice softened, just enough to be dangerous. But you'll be the story that protects you. Marco spoke quietly, almost respectfully. A public appearance, controlled, secure. It puts you under Greco protection in the eyes of everyone. My stomach turned. You want to parade me? Luciano's eyes narrowed. I want to shield you. That's the same thing, I snapped. Luciano leaned in, voice low and absolute. No, one is humiliation, one is dominance. The word dominance made my skin prickle. I swallowed hard. And Sophia? Marco answered before Luciano could. Sophia will be seen for what she is, jealous, unstable, untrustworthy. Her post will look like the tantrum of a woman rejected. I flinched at the cruelty, even as part of me understood the necessity. Luciano's gaze stayed on me. She started this, I whispered. I didn't want any of this. Luciano's voice turned quiet. I know. Then, for the first time since the chase, he did something that wasn't purely control. He lifted his hand and brushed his knuckles lightly against my cheek, so brief I could have imagined it, so restrained it hurt more than comfort. Lena, he murmured, you're going to be brave. My eyes burned. I don't want to be brave. Luciano's gaze held mine. You don't have a choice. Marco closed his folio, ready to leave. I'll prepare the leak about Sophia, and I'll arrange tomorrow's appearance. Luciano nodded. Do it. Marco turned, paused, and looked at me once more. His voice was calm, almost kind, almost. Eat, he said. Rest. Tomorrow will be loud. Then he left. The door shut, and I was alone with Luciano again. The air shifted. I stared at him, shaking. You're going to end the engagement. Luciano's gaze was steady. Yes. That will start a war, I whispered. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Then we can finish it fast. My throat tightened. And you're going to announce me. Luciano stepped closer, stopping inches away. Not announce. His voice dropped, intimate and lethal. Claim. My pulse slammed. I whispered, I'm not yours to claim. Luciano's eyes burned. You're carrying my heir. That doesn't mean... It means everything, he cut in softly. His gaze dipped to my stomach again, and when it returned to my face, there was something in it that scared me more than bullets. Devotion. The kind that didn't ask permission. I will not let the city debate whether you're protected, he murmured. I will make it understood. I swallowed hard. And what do I get? Luciano's mouth curved faintly. You get to live. The coldness of it made my eyes sting. But then he added, quieter, so quiet it felt like truth leaking past his own walls. And you get me. My breath caught, because for a second I believed him, and believing Luciano Greco was its own kind of danger. Outside the suite, footsteps passed, guards shifting positions, the safe house breathing, the world tightening around us. Luciano's voice was low. Sleep. I stared at him. How can I sleep when tomorrow you plan to? Because, he cut in, and the softness was gone again, replaced with pure command. I said so. My jaw clenched. I'm not your... Luciano stepped in, closer, and his voice dropped to a whisper that made my skin go hot. Not yet, he murmured. I froze. His gaze held mine like a promise. Then he turned away, like he'd said too much, and walked to the door. He opened it, spoke to a guard. 2 outside her suite, he ordered. No one in without me. Then he looked back at me, eyes dark. And Lena, he said. My throat tightened. What? Luciano murmured. You don't look down. The words landed in my chest like a warning and a vow, because I understood exactly what he meant. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be allowed to be the quiet daughter anymore. Tomorrow I'd be seen. And once you were seen in Luciano Greco's world, you were never safe from anyone who wanted to take you. My sister made me a headline, and Luciano Greco was about to turn me into a declaration. I woke up to silence that wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that came with rules. The safe house didn't sleep in. It held its breath. It watched. It waited. Somewhere beyond the thick walls, men with guns and earpieces rotated shifts like a clock that measured danger instead of time. I lay still under charcoal sheets, staring at a ceiling that was too clean, too new, no childhood cracks, no familiar stains, nothing to prove a life had ever been lived here. A cage made of perfection. My phone wasn't on the nightstand. Of course it wasn't. Luciano had taken it, or more accurate, Luciano had removed it like a surgeon removing a weapon from a wound. I sat up. The movement slow because my body felt heavier now. Not physically, not yet, but mentally, like the truth had weight. A soft knock came at the door. Not random, not uncertain, controlled. Then the door opened without anyone asking permission. Luciano stepped inside. He didn't look like a man who'd spent the night hunting enemies. He looked like he'd slept 8 hours in a silk coffin and woken up sharper. Dark suit, crisp shirt, no tie, hair neat, eyes lethal. He held a small white box in one hand. Breakfast, maybe, or another piece of my new life I didn't get to choose. You're awake, he said. I forced my voice steady. Where's my phone? Luciano's gaze didn't flicker. Gone. My jaw clenched. You can't. I can. He stepped farther in, closing the door behind him with that same heavy finality that kept echoing in my head. You don't need it. I do. Luciano's mouth barely moved. You want it. The correction hit like a slap. I swung my legs off the bed and stood. You don't get to decide what I need. Luciano set the box on the dresser, unhurried. I decide what keeps you alive. Anger flashed hot and bright, but it didn't burn him. It bounced off him like rain off stone. "What's today?" I demanded. "Your controlled public claim day?" Luciano's gaze lifted to mine, steady. "Yes." My stomach clenched. "Where?" He didn't hesitate. "The Belladonna Gala." The name landed hard. Of course he chose a gala. A glossy, high-class room full of cameras and velvet and people who smiled while plotting each other's funerals. A place where a rumor could become a death sentence with one photograph. "You're going to parade me," I said. Luciano stepped closer, voice low. "I'm going to make the city understand they don't touch you." "That's a parade." "That's a shield," he corrected. "And you're going to wear it." I swallowed hard. "What about Sophia?" A shadow moved behind his eyes. "Marco leaked her messages," Luciano said. "She's already scrambling." My chest tightened. "So you're humiliating her." Luciano's gaze went cold. "She humiliated you first." I hated how easy it was for him to say it like pain had a scoreboard. I whispered, "She's my sister." Luciano's voice was flat. "She's your enemy." The bluntness stole my breath. Before I could answer, he gestured to the box on the dresser. "Open it." I stared at it like it was a trap. Luciano's gaze narrowed. "Lena." My spine stiffened. I walked to the dresser and opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a dress. Not soft, not innocent. Black satin, cut sleek and elegant, with a neckline that didn't scream for attention, but demanded it anyway. A thin belt with a small gold clasp. The kind of dress that said, "I'm not a girl you overlook." My throat tightened. "I don't have anything else," I muttered, because admitting I liked it felt like surrender. Luciano stepped behind me, close enough that his presence warmed my back. "You'll wear that." I gripped the edge of the dresser. "You want me to look like—" "What?" Luciano's voice dropped near my ear. "Like you belong at my side." My pulse stumbled. I turned my head slightly, catching the edge of his profile in the mirror. Sharp jaw, calm mouth, eyes focused. "You're doing this to punish Sophia," I said quietly. Luciano's gaze met mine through the mirror. "I'm doing this to protect you." "And what if I don't want your protection?" I whispered. Luciano's voice didn't change. "You do." I swallowed, anger and fear tangling together. "You don't know what I want." Luciano's eyes went darker. "I know what you're afraid of, and I know you're tired of being invisible." I flinched, because it was true, and because he'd just spoken the ugliest secret I'd never admitted out loud. Luciano stepped back, giving me air again. "Get dressed. Rosa will help with your hair." I spun toward him. "I'm not letting a stranger touch me." Luciano's gaze sharpened. "Rosa is loyal." "So are you," I snapped, then regretted it instantly, because the word loyal didn't fit him. Luciano's mouth curved faintly. Yes, the confidence of that one syllable made my stomach twist. He turned toward the door. 10 minutes. The same number he'd used when he'd ordered my life pact. 10 minutes to become someone else. "Luciano," I said, voice tight. He paused, hand on the door. "What if—" My throat tightened. "What if there's another attack?" Luciano looked back at me, eyes steady. "Then they die." No drama, no heat, just fact. The door shut, and I stood in the middle of the suite, staring at the dress like it was a sentence in satin. Rosa arrived with a quiet efficiency that made her feel less like a nurse and more like an assassin who knew how to curl hair. She didn't ask personal questions. She didn't comment on my shaking hands. She simply set tools on the vanity and said, "Sit." I sat. She brushed my hair, pinned it back into something sleek and expensive, left a few strands loose near my face to soften the edges. When she finished, she held out a small pill packet. "Vitamins," she said. I took them because arguing felt pointless. Then she opened a drawer at the vanity and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Jewelry." I stared. "No." Rosa's expression didn't change. Don Luciano requested. "I'm not wearing his." Rosa's eyes flicked to mine, calm. "You're walking into a room full of sharks. Wear the armor." Armor. That word hit differently. I opened the pouch. Inside, a delicate gold chain with a small pendant, simple, elegant, not flashy. But the pendant was a thin ring, not a wedding band, a symbol, a circle, a claim without paperwork. My throat tightened. Rosa fastened it around my neck with careful hands. The cool metal touched my skin like a brand. Then she stepped back and nodded once. "You look like you belong." I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like I was about to be consumed. Luciano returned exactly when he said he would. 10 minutes, not 11. He entered, took one look at me, and went still, not surprised. focused. He crossed the room slowly, stopping in front of me. His gaze traveled over the dress, the pendant, my face. Then his eyes met mine. "Good," he murmured. I clenched my jaw. "Don't." His mouth barely moved. "Don't what?" "Don't look at me like that," I whispered. "Like I'm—" Luciano's gaze dipped to my stomach, then returned to my eyes. "Like you're mine?" My breath caught. I didn't answer. Luciano reached out and adjusted the pendant with 2 fingers barely touching my skin. The contact sent a shiver through me. "This stays visible," he said. I swallowed hard. "So they know who owns me." Luciano's eyes went flat. "So they know who dies if they try to take you." The brutality of it made my stomach twist. He offered his arm. Not a question. An expectation. My pride screamed. My fear did too. I slid my hand onto his arm. His muscle tightened under my fingers, and for a split second it felt like the world snapped into a new alignment. Me beside him, not behind anyone. Luciano led me out of the suite. The hallway outside was lined with guards. Black suits. Earpieces. Guns hidden but present. A moving wall. We reached the elevator. 2 men entered with us, facing outward like mirrors of threat. The ride down felt too quiet. My heartbeat was too loud. The pendant felt heavy on my throat. Luciano leaned slightly toward me, voice low enough only I could hear. "You don't look down." My stomach clenched. "You already said that." Luciano's gaze stayed forward. "And you'll obey." I snapped. "I'm not your—" Luciano's hand closed around mine, fingers firm, cutting me off without a word. The grip wasn't gentle, but it wasn't cruel. It was anchoring, and it made me furious that it worked. The elevator doors opened. We moved through the compound and into a waiting car, sleek, black, glossy, the kind of vehicle that looked like it was born in the shadow of money. This time there was no chase, but my body didn't trust the calm. As the car rolled into the city, my mind kept seeing Sophia's post, my mother's face, my father's fury, and the headline now spreading like wildfire. I turned to Luciano. "What exactly are you going to do at the gala?" Luciano's gaze stayed on the road. "Stand with you." "That's not an answer." Luciano finally looked at me. "It's the only one that matters." My throat tightened. "You're going to end the engagement publicly." Luciano's mouth barely moved. "Yes." "And my sister," Luciano's voice was quiet, "will be forced to smile." The cruelty of that made my skin prickle. Then he added, softer, but no less dangerous, "Just like you were forced to." My breath caught. He remembered. He'd watched me swallow humiliation at my own table, and now he was returning it with interest. The Belladonna Gala was everything my family worshipped. Marble steps lit with golden lanterns, red carpet, photographers behind velvet ropes, women in glittering gowns and men in suits that hid weapons and lies. Cameras flashed like lightning. The moment our car pulled up, the air changed. You could feel attention snap toward us like a whip. Luciano stepped out first, and the crowd reacted the way crowds reacted to power, with excitement laced with fear. He turned and offered his hand. I stared at it for half a beat. Then I took it. The flashbulbs exploded. Luciano helped me out, slow and deliberate, like he wanted the moment photographed from every angle. I stepped onto the carpet and forced my shoulders back. "Don't look down. Don't shrink. Don't apologize." Luciano's hand slid to the small of my back, firm, guiding, not intimate for romance, but intimate for control. We walked. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that DeSantis? Greco? Pregnant? His?" My throat tightened. My skin felt too exposed, too seen. Luciano didn't flinch. He looked straight ahead, calm, as if the world was a room he owned. A reporter pushed forward, voice bright. "Don Luciano, comment about the engagement." Luciano didn't stop walking. He didn't even look at the reporter. He said one sentence over his shoulder, voice low and clear enough to carry. "The engagement is canceled." The crowd gasped. My stomach dropped. Flashbulbs went insane. Luciano kept walking. Another voice, female, sharp. "Is that Lena DeSantis with you?" "Is she?" Luciano finally stopped. The sudden stillness hit like a gun cocking. He turned slightly so he faced the cameras, and then he did it. He lifted my hand, mine still resting on his arm, and brought my knuckles to his mouth. Not a kiss meant for me. A kiss meant for the city. Cameras snapped. People sucked in breaths. Luciano's lips barely touched my skin, but the gesture felt like a stamp. Then he looked straight at the reporters and said calmly, "She is under Greco protection." Protection. A shield. A cage. My throat tightened. Someone shouted, "Is she carrying your child?" Silence fell so hard it felt like the entire gala held its breath. Luciano's gaze didn't waver. His hand slid deliberately to my waist. Not low, not improper, but possessive enough that every person watching understood. Yes, he said. The word detonated. The crowd erupted into a roar of shock and whispers and flashbulbs. My knees nearly buckled. Luciano leaned toward my ear, voice low, only for me. "Don't look down," he murmured again. I forced myself to stand taller, even as my world cracked open. Because in that moment I understood something brutal. Luciano had just made me untouchable, and also impossible to hide. Inside the ballroom, the air was thick with perfume and power. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, throwing light like diamonds across the room. A string quartet played something elegant, ignorant of the way the room had turned predatory. People watched us like we were the main event. Luciano guided me through the crowd without slowing, his hand still firm at my back. I felt eyes on my stomach, on my necklace, on my face. I wanted to disappear. Luciano wouldn't let me. We reached a raised platform near the center where the hosts greeted donors, where the important people stood. And there, standing near the champagne tower like she belonged there, was Sophia. In a white gown. A cruel choice. Bridal without being a bride. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was too. But her eyes were pure poison. She saw me immediately. She saw Luciano's hand on my waist, and she walked toward us like she was about to set the room on fire. Luciano didn't move. He waited. Sophia stopped in front of us, smile stretched tight. "Luciano," she said, voice sweet enough for cameras. "There you are." Luciano's gaze was calm. "Sophia." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp. "Lena." I forced my face into ice. "Sophia." Her smile widened. "Congratulations." The word dripped with venom. Luciano's hand tightened at my waist. A warning. Don't react. Sophia leaned closer, voice lowering, still smiling for the world. "Do you know what people are saying? They're saying you trapped him." My throat tightened. Luciano spoke before I could. "They can say whatever they want." Sophia's eyes flashed. "And you're just going to accept this?" Luciano's gaze went cold. "I announced it." Sophia's smile trembled. "You humiliated me." Luciano's voice didn't change. "You humiliated yourself." Sophia's eyes glittered, wet with rage. Then she turned slightly so the cameras could catch her. Profile. Angelic. Wounded. "Luciano," she said loudly for the room, "I hope you know exactly who you're standing with." My stomach dropped. Luciano's gaze sharpened. "Say it." Sophia's smile widened, bright and dangerous. "She's a liar," Sophia announced, voice ringing, "and if she says she's carrying your heir, she should prove it." The room went still. Every camera swung toward me. My mouth went dry. Luciano's hand at my waist became iron. Sophia's eyes locked on mine, triumph burning. "Show them," she purred. "Or admit you're a scandal with no proof." My chest tightened because Sophia wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was trying to force Luciano's hand, force him to expose medical proof, force him to reveal vulnerabilities, force him to turn me into evidence. And the worst part? People leaned in like they wanted it, like they wanted to see my body turned into a spectacle. Luciano's voice cut through the silence, low and deadly calm. "You want proof?" he said. Sophia's smile widened. "Yes." Luciano's gaze didn't leave her. "Good." Then he turned slightly and lifted his hand. Marco appeared at his shoulder like he'd been summoned by thought. Luciano didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Bring it," he said, and I realized with a cold drop of horror, Luciano had planned for this. He'd planned for Sophia to demand proof. He'd planned for the city to want blood. And whatever Marco was about to bring was going to change everything. The gala wasn't a celebration. It was a battlefield dressed in diamonds, and my sister had just demanded the first cut. You still here? Like, subscribe and comment, prove it. Should the proof be A, a controlled ultrasound reveal to shut everyone up, or B, a devastating reveal that exposes Sophia's betrayal instead? Put it in the comments. I'm reading everything. The room went so quiet I could hear the string quartet miss a note. Not because they were unprofessional, because Sophia's words had landed like a blade in a room full of throats. Prove it. Every camera leaned in, every society wife lifted her chin, every man with blood under his fingernails watched like this was entertainment, and I, standing in black satin beside Luciano Greco, felt my skin tighten as if the air itself wanted to peel me open. Sophia smiled like she'd won. Her white gown caught the chandelier light and threw it back like a dare. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, bright with cruelty, as if she could force me to crumble by sheer will. Luciano didn't look at me. He didn't need to. His hand at my waist tightened, not painful, possessive. A message pressed into my bones. Stand. Marco appeared at Luciano's shoulder like he'd been summoned by a thought. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look worried. He looked prepared. Luciano's voice was low, even, and somehow it carried over the silence anyway. Bring it. Sophia's smile widened. Yes! Bring it! My stomach turned hard. I whispered without moving my lips. Luciano, don't. His fingers flexed against my waist. A warning and a promise at once. Then Marco nodded once and slipped away into the crowd, smooth, unseen, like a shadow that belonged to power. The seconds that followed stretched too long. People started whispering again, soft and hungry. She's really pregnant. He's really claiming her. Look at her necklace, Greco gold. Poor Sophia. No, Sophia was always vicious. Do you think the baby is... Hush, hush! My chest tightened until breathing hurt. Sophia leaned closer, still smiling for the cameras. You look pale, Lena, she murmured. Careful, you might faint again. Luciano's gaze finally shifted, just slightly, toward Sophia. The temperature around him changed. His calm didn't break, it sharpened. Sophia, he said quietly, you're enjoying this. Her lashes fluttered. I'm enjoying truth. Luciano's mouth barely moved. You wouldn't recognize truth if it bled on your shoes. A ripple ran through the people closest to us. Shock, delight, fear. Sophia's smile trembled for half a second. Then she steadied it. Insult me all you want. I'm still the one who was supposed to be your wife. Luciano's eyes went flat. Supposed to. The way he said it made her flinch, just barely. I stood too still, afraid that if I moved my knees would buckle. For the pendant at my throat felt suddenly heavy, as if it wasn't jewelry anymore, but a chain. Sophia's voice dropped again, intimate and cruel. Do you know what they're saying, Lena? That you opened your legs to steal my life. My vision flashed hot. Rage surged. Luciano's hand tightened at my waist, anchoring me. I forced my face into ice. You're the one who posted it. Sophia's smile widened. I did. Because you don't get to hide behind my engagement. Luciano cut in, voice low. You don't get to speak to her. Sophia turned her attention to him, eyes bright with something desperate now. Then stop protecting her like she's your wife. Luciano's gaze didn't waver. She's carrying my heir. Sophia's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Then prove it. The room held its breath. Footsteps approached. Marco returned, but he wasn't alone. 2 Greco men flanked him, and between them walked Dr. Santoro. Silver hair, charcoal suit, eyes like cold steel. In his hand was a slim black portfolio case. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Sophia's smile widened like she couldn't help herself. Ah, the doctor. A murmur ran through the crowd. Recognition. Rumor. Fear. Doctors like Dr. Santoro weren't society doctors. They were the kind of doctors that worked for men who didn't call ambulances. Luciano didn't move. He simply extended his hand. Dr. Santoro handed him the portfolio case. Luciano opened it without hurry. My breath stopped. Inside was a single envelope and a smaller sealed folder. Luciano withdrew the envelope, then looked at Dr. Santoro. Say it, Luciano ordered. Dr. Santoro's gaze swept the crowd once. No warmth, no apology. Then he spoke clearly, calmly, like he was reading out a weather forecast. Signorina Lena DeSantis is pregnant, he said. Approximately 7 weeks. A gasp tore through the room. Sophia's smile faltered. Then she recovered, voice sharp. And the father? Silence. Every eye locked on Luciano. He didn't blink. Me, Luciano said. His voice didn't shake, didn't rise, didn't soften. It simply was. The room erupted. Whispers, flashbulbs, stunned laughter, people pushing closer to hear. I stood there, frozen, heat crawling up my throat. My private truth had just been announced like an auction lot. Sophia's cheeks flushed red, then white. She forced a laugh that sounded like it might crack her teeth. How convenient. A doctor employed by you confirms what you want confirmed. Luciano's gaze turned to her, and his mouth curved, not a smile. A knife. You want proof, he said softly. Now you'll get truth. Sophia blinked. What? Luciano slid the sealed folder out of the case and handed it to Marco without looking. Read it, Luciano said. Marco opened the folder with deliberate slowness. I felt it before I understood it. Something changing in the room, the air tightening, people sensing this wasn't just about my pregnancy anymore. Marco's eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His expression didn't change, but the way his jaw tightened told me everything. Sophia's smile started to strain. What is that? She demanded. Luciano's gaze stayed calm. Your leverage. Sophia's eyes flashed. I don't have leverage. I have dignity. Luciano's voice was quiet. No, you have lies. Marco lifted his eyes to the room, voice carrying cleanly through the shocked silence. Miss Sofia De Santis, he read, has been in contact with Alessandro Romano's intermediary for the past 3 weeks. The name Romano rippled through the crowd like poison. Men in the underworld shifted. Faces tightened. Society wives looked confused, but their husbands understood, and fear moved through them. Sofia went still, her lips parted slightly. Lies, she breathed. Marco continued, unflinching. She offered details about the De Santis house security layout, staff rotation schedules, and Don Luciano's arrival times. In exchange, she requested, quote, a way to remove Lena De Santis without scandal. The air shattered. My mother wasn't here to hear it. But Sofia didn't need witnesses from home. She needed witnesses from the city. And now she had them. Sofia's face turned white so fast it looked unreal. No, that's not. Luciano's voice cut through, low and deadly. It's your handwriting. Sofia shook her head, frantic. You forged that. Luciano took one step forward, not touching her, not shouting. And yet the entire crowd instinctively leaned back like they felt the edge of him. You wanted her exposed, Luciano said, calm as ice, so you could ruin her. Sofia's eyes went wild. I wanted to protect the alliance. Luciano's gaze didn't soften. You wanted to protect your ego. Sofia's breath came in quick, panicked bursts. She turned toward the crowd, searching for sympathy, for rescue, for someone to tell her she wasn't standing naked in front of everyone. But there was no sympathy in this room for a woman accused of feeding information to Romano. That wasn't society drama. That was a death sentence with a smile on it. Sofia's voice cracked. Luciano, please. Luciano cut her off. You tried to get her killed. Sofia flinched, as if he'd struck her. I didn't, she sobbed, and the sob wasn't performance anymore. It was fear. I didn't think. Luciano's eyes turned flat. That's the only honest thing you've said. My stomach churned so hard I thought I might be sick right there on the polished floor. I pressed a hand against my side, trying to breathe. Sofia saw the movement. Her eyes snapped to my stomach. And suddenly her fear flipped into something uglier, rage at the one thing she couldn't take from me. She straightened, face tight, voice sharp again. Even if I did talk, so what? You're still humiliating me for a woman who seduced you. For a baby that could be. Luciano moved, not violently, efficiently. He turned slightly, blocking me with his body in a way that made my lungs seize. His hand remained at my waist, anchoring me behind him. Then he spoke in a voice so quiet it made the entire room strain to hear. Say it. Luciano murmured. Sofia's chin lifted, defiant. Say what? Luciano's gaze locked on her like a chain. Say the baby isn't mine. Sofia's lips parted. Her pride and desperation warred on her face. She looked around, at the cameras, the people, the attention she'd always craved. Then she spat it, loud enough to cut glass. It isn't yours. The room gasped. I went cold from scalp to toes. Luciano didn't blink. He didn't react the way a man accused would. No flinch, no anger. Just stillness. And in that stillness, the fear that had been lurking in my chest all day finally found teeth. Because Sofia had just pressed the one button that could break me. Doubt. Luciano's hand tightened at my waist. His voice came low, only for me. Don't move. Then, to the room, he said calmly. Dr. Santoro. The doctor stepped forward, expression unchanged. Luciano's gaze stayed on Sofia. Tell them what else you found. Sofia blinked rapidly. What else? Santoro spoke like a man reciting facts. I took blood yesterday. In addition to confirming pregnancy hormones, I collected a sample for paternity preparation. Sofia's face twisted. You can't, there's no... Luciano's eyes cut to her. There is. Marco produced a small, sealed envelope from the folder. He held it up so the cameras could see the official stamp. Luciano's voice was calm. This contains the chain of custody documentation. Sofia stared, shaking. This is insane. Luciano stepped closer to her, one step just enough. You demanded proof, he said softly. So I brought it. Sofia's eyes went to the cameras again. She realized too late that she'd walked into Luciano's trap. Because he hadn't just planned to protect me. He'd planned to destroy her, publicly, permanently, without even needing to raise his voice. Sofia's voice broke. Luciano, please. Luciano didn't look at her like a man begging for mercy. He looked at her like a man deciding how to dispose of waste. The engagement is over, Luciano said, voice carrying. The alliance is renegotiated with your father directly. You will return to your home tonight. Sofia's eyes widened. You can't send me home. Everyone will. Luciano cut in, sharp and final. Everyone will know you tried to sell information to Romano. Sophia swayed. Her lips trembled. Her voice cracked into a whisper. You'll ruin me. Luciano's gaze was ice. You ruined yourself. A murmur ran through the crowd. Agreement, fear, delight. Marco stepped closer to Luciano and murmured something. Luciano listened without moving, eyes never leaving Sophia. Then Luciano spoke again, lower. And if Romano touches her again, he said, voice deadly calm, I will end every man who has ever spoken your name. Sophia's knees buckled slightly. She caught herself on the edge of a champagne table. The cameras snapped harder. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to cover my stomach with both hands and run out of this room and never be seen again. But Luciano's hand at my waist was iron. He was making me stay. He was making me endure, because in his world, endurance was the currency of survival. Sophia's gaze cut to me now, pure hatred. You think you won, she hissed under her breath. My throat tightened. Luciano heard it anyway. He leaned slightly toward Sophia, voice low enough that it sounded almost intimate. She won't need to think, Luciano murmured. She'll live? Sophia's eyes flashed, wet and wild. And what will she be to you, a kept woman? A mistake you parade because you knocked her up? My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Luciano's gaze flicked to me, brief, heavy. Then he did something that made the room tilt. He turned fully toward me. He lifted my hand in front of everyone, slow, deliberate, and pressed his lips to my knuckles again. Not for the cameras this time, for the message. Then he looked out at the room, eyes like cold fire, and said, She is my future. Silence fell like a curtain. Sophia's face cracked, the crowd held its breath, and in that moment, I realized Luciano Greco had just done something more dangerous than claiming my pregnancy. He'd claimed me. Not as a secret, not as leverage, as a declaration. My pulse pounded, my voice trembled in my throat, and I didn't know if I was about to cry or scream or kiss him. Luciano's mouth moved near my ear, only for me. Breathe, he murmured. You did well. I swallowed hard. Don't, I whispered back. Luciano's hand tightened at my waist and his voice came lower, rougher. I'm not praising you, he murmured. I'm promising you. Then Marco stepped closer. Don Luciano, we need to leave. Romano's men won't like this. Luciano's gaze stayed on the crowd for one last beat, as if daring anyone to challenge him. Then he guided me with firm control away from the platform, away from Sophia's ruined smile, away from the champagne tower that had become a witness stand. As we walked, whispers chased us, but now they weren't hungry, they were afraid. Because the city had just learned one thing, clearly and irrevocably, Lena DeSantis wasn't alone. And Luciano Greco didn't share. I thought Sophia was the danger. But the real danger was what Luciano Greco had just made me, untouchable. And his. The moment we stepped out of the ballroom, the air hit my skin like cold water. Inside, chandeliers and perfume and cameras. Outside, hallway marble, security radios, the real pulse of danger. Luciano didn't loosen his grip on me. If anything, his hand at my waist tightened as we moved through the service corridor, away from the main entrance, away from the crowd that would have swallowed me whole, just to chew on the rumor of my belly. Marco walked ahead, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. 2 guards flanked us, another trailed behind, a moving fortress. I should have felt safe. I felt claimed. My throat still burned from holding back too much. Humiliation, shock, the quiet terror of being publicly confirmed as pregnant. Not maybe, not rumor, fact. And now the city knew. I swallowed hard. Luciano, he didn't look at me. Breathe. I am breathing. Luciano's gaze flicked sideways, sharp, intimate. No, you're surviving. There's a difference. His voice was too calm for what had just happened. Too controlled. Like he'd already moved on to the next threat. Marco ended his call and turned back to Luciano. His face was a mask, but his eyes were alert. They're outside, Marco said. Not many. My stomach dropped. Romano? Marco nodded once. Luciano didn't swear, didn't react the way my body begged him to. He simply adjusted his stance so his body blocked mine more fully. We're not using the front, Luciano said. Marco's gaze cut to me, then back to Luciano. If we wait too long, the press swarms. Luciano's mouth barely moved. Let them swarm. Because in Luciano Greco's world, cameras were just another kind of weapon, and he was never the one bleeding. We reached a private elevator. A guard keyed it. The doors slid open silently. Luciano guided me inside, close enough that I could feel the heat of him even through my dress. The pendant at my throat felt heavier with every breath. The doors closed. For the first time since Sophia's demand, we were sealed away from the world. My body finally trembled. I pressed my fingers to the pendant ring, trying to anchor myself in something real. You brought a doctor. Luciano's voice was low. You needed proof. I needed privacy, I snapped, and the words came out sharper than I meant, because pain always sharpened my voice when I couldn't cry. Luciano's gaze turned to me fully now, and it was the same look that had haunted me since the terrace. Calm dominance with something dangerous underneath it. You lost privacy the moment your sister posted, he said. The moment Romano sent men to your father's house. My breath hitched. He softened his tone by a fraction, almost imperceptible. What you still have, Luciano murmured, is my control. I laughed, bitter and shaking. That's supposed to comfort me? Luciano stepped closer in the elevator's narrow space. It should, because he meant it. He meant that his control was safer than anyone else's love. And the part of me that was tired of drowning wanted to cling to that certainty like a life raft. The elevator stopped. Doors opened. We stepped into a private underground garage where the air smelled like cement and gasoline and rain tracked in on polished tires. 2 black cars waited, engines running. But the guards didn't relax. Marco moved first, scanning the far end of the garage where shadows pooled like spilled ink. Then a voice came from the dark, slow, smooth, mocking. Don Greco. My blood turned to ice. Luciano didn't move. He didn't even reach for a weapon. He simply stopped walking like the world had paused for him. A man stepped into the light. He wasn't young, maybe mid-50s, tall, lean, wearing a suit the color of dried blood. His hair was slicked back, silver at the temples, eyes sharp as broken glass. 2 men shadowed him, hands tucked inside their jackets. Romano. I'd never seen him, but my body recognized the danger in him the way it recognized Luciano. Only this danger wasn't controlled. It was hungry. Romano's gaze slid to me like a slow cut. And there she is. My stomach clenched so hard pain bloomed behind my ribs. Luciano angled his body, blocking me from Romano's full view. Alessandro, Luciano said, voice calm. Romano smiled. What a show you put on, doctor and all. His eyes glittered. You're getting sentimental. Luciano's voice didn't change. You're trespassing. Romano lifted a hand in mock surrender. I came to congratulate you. Marco's voice went cold. Step back. Romano ignored him, gaze fixed on Luciano. An heir, he mused. In the open. That takes courage. Luciano's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Say what you came to say. Romano chuckled. Always straight to business. Then his expression sharpened. You embarrassed me tonight. Luciano's mouth barely moved. I don't think about you enough to embarrass you. Romano's smile tightened. You exposed my channel. My blood ran cold. Channel. Intermediary. The messages. Luciano had burned something tonight. Something Romano didn't want seen. Romano took one slow step forward. Luciano didn't retreat. He simply tightened his grip on me, fingers firm at my waist. A silent instruction. Stay behind me. Romano's gaze flicked to Luciano's hand on my body. You're holding her like she's a crown. Luciano's voice dipped lower. She's not your topic. Romano's smile sharpened. Everything is my topic when it threatens me. The garage felt smaller. The air felt thinner. One of Luciano's guards shifted, subtle, ready. Romano noticed. He laughed softly. No gunplay tonight. Too messy. Too many cameras upstairs. His gaze slid to me again, cruelly curious. Besides, I don't need bullets. My stomach twisted. Luciano's voice went flat. Then leave. Romano's eyes flashed. Or what? Luciano met his gaze without blinking. Or I end you. Romano paused, studying Luciano like he was measuring whether he meant it. Then he smiled again, wider, uglier. You can't kill me tonight, Luciano. Not here. Not with the city watching you play family man. The words hit hard because they were true. Luciano's jaw flexed once. Romano leaned slightly to the side, trying to see me around Luciano's shoulder. Tell me, Lena, do you feel special? Luciano moved. Not fast. Efficient. He shifted, fully blocking Romano's line of sight, a wall of suit and dominance. Romano's smile widened at the reaction. Ah, there it is, emotion. Luciano's voice turned quiet, lethal. Say her name again. Romano's eyes glittered with amusement. Or what? You'll glare me to death? Luciano didn't answer. He didn't have to. Marco spoke, calm as ice. Don Romano, you're outnumbered. Romano laughed. Outnumbered doesn't scare me. I've died before. His gaze stayed on Luciano. I came to offer a bargain. Luciano's eyes narrowed. I don't bargain with men who target women. Romano's smile tightened. Then you should have kept her hidden. The words sliced through me. Because they carried the truth I didn't want to admit. Luciano's claim made me protected. It also made me visible. Romano lifted his chin. Here's my bargain. You want peace? His gaze flicked down, toward my stomach. Deliberate, cruel. Give me the girl. My world went silent. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I waited for Luciano's answer like a verdict on whether I was a person or a price. Luciano's grip on me tightened. Then he spoke, and his voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. No, Luciano said. Romano's smile remained. You'll choose war. Luciano's eyes burned. You chose war the moment you looked at her. Romano's gaze sharpened. Don't pretend this is love. Luciano's answer was immediate. It is. My knees nearly buckled. Not because the word was sweet, because it was terrifying. Because love in Luciano Greco's mouth didn't sound like poetry. It sounded like a sentence carved in stone. Romano stared for a beat, then chuckled, as if amused by something private. Fine. Keep your precious heir. He spread his hands. But understand this. Every man will come for her now, because you told them she matters. Luciano's gaze didn't waver. Let them. Romano's smile turned cold. They won't all be as polite as me. Luciano's voice turned to ice. You're not polite. Romano laughed, and the sound echoed off concrete. No, I'm just patient. He took a step back, eyes still fixed on Luciano. Enjoy your happy announcement, Don Greco. I'll enjoy what comes after. He gestured to his men. They began to retreat into the shadows, but before Romano vanished, he offered one last smile, directed at me this time, cruel and intimate. Congratulations, he said softly. I hope the baby lives. My stomach lurched. Luciano's whole body tensed like a blade being drawn. Marco murmured, Don. Luciano didn't chase. He didn't shout. He didn't give Romano the satisfaction. He stood perfectly still until Romano disappeared into darkness. Then Luciano exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding back the urge to set the world on fire. Marco turned to Luciano. We need to relocate. Tonight. Luciano nodded once. Yes. Then he looked at me. And the look in his eyes was the first real crack I'd seen in him since this began. Not weakness. Fear, buried deep. Controlled. But there. Get in the car, Luciano said. My voice barely worked. Luciano? He stepped closer, cupping my face with one hand, brief, firm, warm. The touch wasn't gentle, the way comfort should be. It was desperate control disguised as calm. Look at me, he murmured. I did. His eyes were dark and absolute. You're safe, he said. I swallowed hard. He just said, I know what he said. Luciano's thumb brushed my cheekbone once. That's why you're coming home with me. Home. The word hit wrong because I didn't know what home was anymore. I whispered, Your home? Luciano's mouth barely moved. Mine. Where no one reaches you. I stared at him. And what am I there? Your prisoner? Luciano's gaze sharpened. My wife. My lungs stopped. The garage tilted. Marco's head turned slightly, as if even he hadn't expected that sentence right now. I could barely breathe. You can't just... Luciano's voice cut in, low and deadly calm. I can, and I will. He leaned closer, forehead almost touching mine, voice dropping into something only I could hear. This isn't romance, he murmured. This is protection with paperwork. Tears stung my eyes. Rage tears, fear tears, something else I didn't have language for. You're doing this because of the baby. I whispered. Luciano's eyes didn't blink. I'm doing this because I want you untouchable. My throat tightened. Untouchable to everyone, or untouchable to everyone but you? Luciano's jaw flexed. Then he said quietly, everyone. The single word hit like a vow. He released my face, took my hand, and guided me into the car. This time he sat beside me immediately, not across, not distant. Close. The car rolled out of the garage and into the rain-slick city. No sirens, no chase, just speed and silence and the sense that the world had shifted. I stared out the window at blurred streetlights and tried not to think about Romano's smile. I hope the baby lives. My hand slid to my stomach without meaning to. Luciano noticed. Of course he did. He covered my hand with his, warm, heavy, steady. I flinched at first. Then my fingers relaxed under his because my body was tired of fighting gravity. His voice came low. Breathe, Lena. I swallowed hard. I hate this. Luciano's gaze stayed forward. Good. I blinked. Good? You should hate it, he said. You should hate that men like Romano exist. You should hate that your sister tried to trade you for status. His voice dipped lower. But don't hate your child for making you visible. My throat tightened. I don't hate, Luciano interrupted softly. Then say it. I stared at him. Luciano's eyes cut to mine, intense. Say you want this, baby. My breath hitched. My chest ached. Because wanting meant attachment. Attachment meant vulnerability. But the truth was already inside me, growing, undeniable. I whispered, I want my baby safe. Luciano's hand tightened over mine. Good. I swallowed. You didn't ask if I want to be your wife. Luciano's gaze stayed steady. Do you? The question was quiet, but it wasn't gentle. It was Luciano. Direct, dangerous, real. I opened my mouth, closed it, because what I wanted was complicated. I wanted safety. I wanted freedom. I wanted to be seen and not devoured. I wanted to be loved without being owned. And I didn't know if Luciano Greco could do love without ownership. I whispered, I don't know. Luciano nodded once, as if he'd expected that. Then I'll give you time. I laughed, bitter. You? Giving time? Luciano's mouth barely moved. I'm not patient with enemies. His gaze dipped to my stomach. I'm patient with you. My breath caught. The car turned through tall iron gates and into a private estate that made my father's mansion look like a museum. Everything here was bigger, cleaner, sharper, armed. We pulled under a covered entry. Guards moved immediately, doors opened, orders murmured into radios. Luciano got out first, then offered his hand. Again, directive disguised as help. I took it because my legs were shaking. He guided me inside. The foyer was marble and gold and warm light. Hot, but nothing about it felt welcoming. It felt like power wearing perfume. A woman appeared, older, stern, dressed in black. Not a maid. Not family. Her eyes landed on me, then on my stomach, then on Luciano. Don Luciano, she said. Teresa, Luciano replied. Prepare the West Suite. Full security. No one enters without me. Teresa's gaze was sharp. Yes, Don. She looked at me again, measured, not unkind. Signorina. Luciano's hand pressed gently at my back. Come. We moved through corridors that echoed softly, past paintings that looked too expensive to exist, past men who bowed their heads as we passed. No one stared at me like a curiosity. They stared at me like a fact. They already knew. That was the sick part. Luciano had made the decision. His house had accepted it before I'd even walked in. We reached the West Suite. It was gorgeous. Bedroom, sitting room, bathroom, with a soaking tub that could drown a woman in luxury. But the windows didn't open, and the door had a keypad, and there were 2 guards outside before Luciano even stepped in. He shut the door behind us. I turned, throat tight. This is a prison. Luciano's gaze held mine. This is a fortress. It's the same thing, I whispered. Luciano stepped closer. Not for me. My breath hitched. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. My stomach dropped. No. Luciano opened it anyway. Inside was a ring. Not delicate, not flashy, a heavy gold band with a dark stone, clean, brutal, unmistakably Greco. My pulse hammered. Luciano, his gaze didn't soften. This is how you become untouchable. I'm already untouchable, I whispered. You said it. Luciano's eyes narrowed. I'm not enough. He held the ring out, palm up, a king offering a crown he expected you to wear. You can refuse, he said quietly. I blinked. I can? Luciano's gaze stayed steady. Yes. Hope flickered, small, fragile. Then he added, voice like steel, and I will still protect you, but the city will keep questioning, and questioning invites hands. My stomach tightened. There it was, the choice with a blade behind it. A choice that wasn't really a choice. I whispered, you're backing me into a corner. Luciano's voice came low. I'm building walls around you so you don't die. I swallowed hard. And what about my heart? Luciano's jaw flexed. Your heart will catch up. The cold confidence of it made tears sting. I stared at the ring, then at Luciano, then at my hand. And finally I whispered, if I do this, I'm not your decoration. Luciano's gaze sharpened. No, I'm not your weakness. Luciano's mouth barely moved. No. I'm your partner, I said, voice shaking. Or I'm nothing. Silence stretched. Then Luciano nodded once. Partner, he said. The single word landed in my chest like a vow. He took my hand, slowly, deliberately, and slid the ring onto my finger. The weight of it shocked me. It felt like a shackle. It also felt like a door closing behind me, and another opening in front. Luciano lifted my hand and pressed his lips to the ring. Not for cameras. Not for the city. For me. My breath caught. He didn't smile, but his voice turned low, intimate, and for the first time it didn't sound like command. It sounded like truth. I should have come back after the terrace, he murmured. My throat tightened. Why didn't you? Luciano's eyes held mine, and the crack in him widened just enough to let something human through. Because I was afraid, he admitted. The words stunned me more than any gunshot. Afraid of what? I whispered. Luciano's thumb brushed the ring once. Afraid that if I kept you, I'd ruin you. My voice trembled. And now? Luciano's gaze dipped to my stomach, then lifted to my eyes. Now I ruin anyone who tries to take you, he said softly. And I build something that lasts. My eyes burned. I whispered, do you even know how to love? Luciano's gaze held mine, steady and dark. I will, he said, with you. The room went quiet around us. My pulse slowed just slightly under the weight of his certainty. Luciano leaned in, not rushing, not taking, waiting just long enough that I could stop him. I didn't. His mouth touched mine, controlled, warm, possessive, but careful in a way that felt like restraint and reverence braided together. The kiss wasn't about hunger. It was about promise. When he pulled back, his forehead rested briefly against mine. You're safe here, he murmured, and you're mine. I exhaled shakily. I'm still me. Luciano's mouth twitched. Good. I prefer you sharp. A soft knock came at the door. Teresa's voice. Don Luciano, the doctor called. Romano's intermediary is in custody. Luciano's gaze turned cold again, the Don snapping thick back into place. Good, he said. He looked at me once more, eyes dark, voice low. We end this. I swallowed. You're going to kill Romano. Luciano's expression didn't change. No. I blinked. No. Luciano stepped closer, cupping my face again, brief, steadying. You wanted him gone, not blood on your soul. My chest tightened. Luciano's voice dropped to a lethal calm. Romano will be stripped, his money frozen, his men turned, his allies bought. A pause. Then he'll be delivered to the authorities with enough evidence to bury him. My breath caught. A strategic victory. No public massacre. A power play so clean it was cruel. Luciano's eyes burned. He'll rot in a cell thinking about what he tried to touch. I swallowed hard. And Sophia? Luciano's mouth barely moved. She'll live with what she did. A punishment tailored to her worst fear. Irrelevance. I nodded slowly. Luciano kissed my forehead, so quick it might have been imagined. Then he turned toward the door. But before he left, he looked back at me and said, voice quiet, real, I will come back. I know, I whispered. He paused, as if surprised by the trust in my voice. Then he nodded once and left. The door shut. Guards stationed outside, and I stood in the center of the suite, hand on my ring, other hand on my stomach, breathing in a life that wasn't mine yesterday. Hours later, Luciano returned. No blood on his suit, no rage on his face, just calm. Victory. He walked straight to me, took my hand and pressed it to his chest. You feel that? He murmured. His heart was steady, strong. Yes, I whispered. Romano is finished, Luciano said. He can't reach you. My breath released, shaky. Relief hit me so hard my knees threatened to fold. Luciano caught my waist, steadying, always steadying. Then he lowered his head and pressed his lips gently to my stomach through the fabric of my dress. Heat flooded my eyes. He didn't speak at first. He just stayed there, like he was listening for a heartbeat too small to hear. Then he murmured so soft it felt like prayer. You're safe, both of you. The words cracked something in me. Tears finally spilled. Silent, hot, relieved. Luciano stood, cupped my face, and wiped them with his thumb like he was erasing old pain. No more apologies, he said. I let out a shaky laugh through tears. You can't just rewrite me. Luciano's gaze softened by a fraction. Watch me. I swallowed hard. So what happens now? Luciano's mouth curved faintly. Now we build. He guided me to the couch and sat beside me, close, shoulder to shoulder, not distant. He took my hand and laced our fingers together. A simple gesture, a deadly promise. I will marry you, Luciano said. Soon. Quiet, secure, no circus. My chest tightened. And my family? Luciano's gaze stayed steady. Your father gets his protection. Your mother gets to sleep at night. Your sister stays away. And me, I whispered. Luciano's thumb brushed my ring again. You become Greco. I breathed out slowly. Then I said the one thing that mattered, the one thing that made this more than politics and protection. I won't disappear in your shadow. Luciano's eyes held mine. You won't. How do you know? Luciano leaned in, kissed my temple, and murmured, because I didn't choose you for silence. My breath caught. I whispered, why did you choose me? Luciano's gaze dipped to my mouth and back to my eyes. And for the first time, he let the truth sit in the open without armor. Because you looked at me like you weren't afraid, he said. On that terrace, you kissed me like you were free. Tears stung again. Luciano's voice went lower. I want you free, even if it scares me. My throat tightened. That sounds like love. Luciano's gaze didn't waver. It is, he said. This time the word didn't terrify me. It grounded me. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was Luciano Greco choosing me in the only way he knew. By building a world where no one could take me. I leaned into him, letting my head rest against his shoulder. His arm wrapped around me. Firm, warm, inevitable. And for the first time since the cars rolled up my family's drive, the fear in my bones loosened. Not gone, but quieter, because I was no longer alone in it. Luciano's hand slid over my stomach, protective. I covered his hand with mine. A small, human decision inside a life built on power. He kissed the top of my head and murmured, "We're going to be a family." I closed my eyes. And the word didn't feel like a sentence, it felt like a beginning. He came to marry my sister. But he left the gala with my ring on his name and my child safe under his heart. Epilogue. I didn't know pain could have a sound. Not a scream. Something older. Something that came from a place in me that didn't speak words, only survival. And the first time it tore out of my throat, Luciano Greco went pale. Not concerned, not worried. Pale like a man watching his empire burn and realizing he can't put it out with bullets. "Lena," he started, voice cracking on my name. I tried to laugh, and it turned into another holler that made the nurse flinch and made Luciano's hand clamp harder around mine, like he could anchor me to the world through skin. The hospital room wasn't like the ones in movies. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It smelled like antiseptic and fear and two bright lights. Even the curtains looked nervous. Luciano's men were outside the door. Of course they were. Security like a second heartbeat. But none of that mattered, because the one thing trying to kill me tonight wasn't a rival. It was time. It was my body opening up for the future. And I hated it. I hated it because I couldn't control it, because I couldn't negotiate with it, because it did not care that I was Lena DeSantis turned Greco. It didn't care about rings or vows or protection. It just demanded. Now. Breathe, the nurse said, calm, practiced. In through your nose, out through your mouth. I tried. I swear I tried. And then another contraction slammed through me like a wave meant to drag me under. My back arched off the bed, my fingers clawed at the sheets. A sound ripped out of me, raw and furious, and Luciano's grip tightened until I felt his knuckles turn white around mine. He leaned over me, too close, like he could shield me from my own body. But his eyes were wrecked. "Do something," he snapped at the nurse, voice sharp enough to cut glass. The nurse didn't blink. "We are. She's progressing." Luciano's jaw flexed. "She's screaming." "I'm fine," I lied, and it came out as a sob. Luciano's face turned toward me like my voice had punched him. "Don't you dare say you're fine," he said, low and shaking with a rage that didn't know where to go. "Don't." Another contraction hit. I didn't get to finish breathing. I didn't get to finish thinking. I just broke open again, and the world narrowed to pain and Luciano's hand and the ceiling tiles blurring because tears kept spilling without permission. I heard him talking over me, fast Italian, venom, and prayers braided together. "Get the doctor. Now." "Don Luciano, she's okay." "She is not okay. Look at her." "Sir, I don't care what you call me. Get the doctor." The door opened. Footsteps, another nurse, then a doctor, moving quickly but not panicking, which somehow made me want to kill them. "How long has she been in active labor?" the doctor asked. Luciano answered before I could. "Too long." The doctor blinked once as if learning what it meant to exist in a room with Luciano Greco. "We're monitoring her. The baby's heart rate is stable." Luciano's eyes went feral. "Her heart rate isn't." "I'm right here," I gasped. Luciano snapped to me, and his voice dropped into something that made my chest ache even through pain. "I know," he whispered. "I know, baby. I'm here." Baby. He never called me that. Not once. Not like this. Not like he needed the word to hold on to me. I tried to nod. It turned into a grimace as pain rolled through me again, and the holler that came out of my mouth sounded like someone else. Someone wild. Luciano's eyes glistened. He looked furious at the wetness like it was another enemy. "Don't look at me like that," I panted. "Like what?" His voice was rough. "Like you're scared." Luciano's laugh was a broken thing. "I'm not scared." The doctor cut in gently. "Okay, Lena, we're going to check you." I wanted to say, "Don't touch me," but Luciano's hand pressed to my cheek, warm, huge, trembling just a little, and he whispered, "Let them help you, Piccola." His voice cracked. That was when I understood. Luciano could tear men apart and sleep like a king, but he couldn't fight my pain. He couldn't intimidate my body into being gentle, and it was killing him. The doctor checked me, then nodded. Okay, you're fully dilated. It's time. Time. My throat closed. No, I whispered, even as my body surged with the urge to push, like it didn't care that my mind wanted to run. No, Luciano. He leaned close, forehead almost touching mine. Yes, he said, voice shaking. Yes, you can. I can't. You can, he repeated, and his eyes were so dark and so desperate that it felt like he was begging. And then the contraction hit again and my body decided for me. Push, the nurse coached, calm but firm. Deep breath. Push. I pushed, and pain turned into fire. I screamed. No shame, no pride, just truth. Luciano flinched like I'd stabbed him. Stop, he barked, snapping to the doctor. Stop this, do something. The doctor didn't look away from me. She needs to push. Luciano's voice rose, dangerous. Then help her. We are helping her, the nurse said, still calm. Luciano, she needs you to stay steady. Luciano's laugh was harsh. Steady, she's breaking in half. I was breaking in half. I was becoming something else. I grabbed his hand harder and dragged him down closer. Look at me, I gasped. Don't yell at them. Yell at me. Luciano froze. His eyes snapped to mine. For one heartbeat, the dawn vanished. It was just a man, helpless, furious in love. Mi amore, I can't. He whispered. Yes, you can, I snarled, because pain made me feral. Tell me what to do. Boss me. Don't stand there like you're watching. His throat worked. He swallowed hard. Then Luciano's voice dropped, low and absolute, the voice that made rooms obey. Breathe, he commanded, right into my face. Now. I sucked in air. Hold it. I held it. Push. I pushed. Luciano's grip tightened. His eyes never left mine. Again, he said, voice rough. Again. You're not stopping, you hear me? You don't get to leave me. The words hit something in me, not fear, fury, possession. I snarled around another scream and pushed like I was fighting for my life, because I was. And Luciano started to shake. His forehead was damp, his breathing was too fast, his hand was trembling in mine like he was the one being torn open. Luciano, I panted. I'm here, he said immediately, like he thought if he stopped saying it, I might disappear. Another push. The nurses encouraged me. The doctor's voice steady. And then, a sound changed in the room. A shift. A sharp inhale from one nurse. We can see the head, she said. Luciano's face went white. What? He demanded, voice breaking. What do you mean you can see? Luciano, the doctor said firmly. She's doing great. Luciano snapped. She's screaming. Because she's strong, the nurse said, and for the first time there was something like admiration in her voice. Because she's doing it. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a storm. Lena, Luciano whispered, voice cracking. My love. I went still for a fraction of a second. My love. Heat flared behind my eyes, and then pain hit again, and I screamed anyway because love didn't stop biology. Last big push, the doctor said. Come on, Lena, you can do this. Luciano leaned close, mouth near my ear, voice shaking with command and prayer. Do it, he said, do it. For our baby. For me. For you. Push. I drew in a breath so deep it hurt, and I pushed. Everything in me tightened, snapped, surged. I hollered, not pretty, not controlled, not ashamed. And then, a cry. Not mine. Small, sharp, furious. A newborn cry that sliced through the room like a miracle. My whole body went in a way that felt like dying and being reborn at the same time. For a second, nobody spoke. Then the nurse laughed softly, breathless. You did it. My ears rang. My eyes couldn't focus. I heard the doctor say words like healthy and perfect, but they floated above me like distant music. All I knew was the sound. That tiny cry, that living proof. Luciano made a noise beside me, half laugh, half sob, and when I turned my head, his face was wrecked. Tears were on his cheeks. Actual tears. The dawn of the city crying like he'd been cut open. He looked furious at himself for it. I lifted a shaking hand and wiped his cheek with my thumb. You're crying, I rasped. Luciano's laugh was broken and beautiful. Shut up, I smiled through exhaustion. Make me. He tried to smile back, but it cracked, and his breath hitched. They brought the baby around, wrapped tight, red-faced, loud, and alive. A tiny fist waving like it had something to say about the world. The nurse held him close to my face. A boy, she said softly. My chest tightened so hard I thought pain had returned, but it wasn't pain. It was love arriving like a sucker punch. A boy, I whispered, voice breaking. Luciano went utterly still. his gaze locked on the baby like he couldn't believe something that small could exist in a world as violent as ours. Then the baby opened his eyes, dark, unfocused, and somehow, impossibly, Luciano looked like he'd been shot. He reached out slowly, like he was afraid he'd break him. The nurse guided his hand. Luciano's finger touched the baby's tiny knuckles, and the baby, my son, curled his fist around Luciano's finger like it was the most natural thing in the world. Luciano's breath broke. His jaw clenched hard, trying to hold himself together. He failed. He looked at me, eyes shining, voice rough as gravel. "You did this," he whispered. "You brought him to me." I swallowed hard. "He's ours." Luciano's gaze snapped back to the baby. His thumb brushed the tiny fist like it was sacred. "My son," he said, and the words came out like a vow, like a crown, like a promise to God himself. Then he looked at the doctor, eyes suddenly lethal again. "Whoever leaked her," Luciano said quietly, "I want names." The doctor blinked, startled. "Don Luciano." Luciano cut him off, calm as death. "Names." Marco appeared in the doorway like he'd been waiting for that exact sentence. "Already handled," Marco said. Luciano nodded once, satisfied, then turned back to me. The Don melted again. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead. Not for cameras, not for power, for gratitude, for worship, for the fact that I was still here. "You're safe," he whispered. I laughed weakly. "I feel destroyed." Luciano's mouth trembled into the smallest smile. "You look like victory." The nurse placed the baby against my chest. Warm, heavy, real. The crying softened into little angry grunts, like he was already negotiating. My whole body trembled as I held him, as if my bones were learning a new shape. Luciano's hand came to my shoulder, then my hair, then my cheek, touching like he needed proof I wasn't a hallucination. I looked up at him. The Mafia Don who came to marry my sister. The man who built cages and called them fortresses. The man who yelled at doctors because he couldn't fight pain with bullets. He stared down at our son with a kind of devotion that scared me more than any threat ever had. "Luciano," I whispered. He looked at me instantly, always instantly. "Yes? Promise me," I said, voice shaking. "He won't grow up thinking love is fear." Luciano's throat worked. He swallowed hard. Then he pressed his palm over my heart, gentle, grounding. "I promise," he said, "he'll grow up knowing love is loyalty and safety and a mother who never bowed." My eyes burned. "And a father?" I asked. Luciano's mouth curved faintly. "A father," he murmured, "who will burn the world before he lets anyone touch what's his." I should have corrected him. I should have reminded him I wasn't property. But my son shifted against my chest, and Luciano's hand covered mine over the baby like a seal. And in that moment, it didn't feel like ownership. It felt like belonging. Luciano leaned down, kissed my knuckles, then kissed the baby's head so carefully it almost broke me. "My Lena," he whispered, "my family." Outside the room, I heard the faint murmur of guards, the city still spinning, Sophia somewhere nursing her humiliation like poison. But in here, under sterile lights and warm skin, I understood the true ending of our story. Not the gala, not the ring, not the headlines. This, a baby's fist around Luciano Greco's finger. And Luciano, helpless, furious in love, finally learning there are battles you win by staying. I didn't just survive him. I built a life with him. If you made it to the end, I need you to take a breath with me. Because Lena didn't just survive a war, she won one. And Luciano Greco, that man didn't just claim her, he chose her. Out loud, in front of everyone. And now, nothing on this earth is touching her or their baby without paying the price. So tell me, what was your favorite moment? Was it Luciano shutting Sophia down at the gala, the safe house rules, the prove it showdown? Or the birth where he looked like he'd rather fight a city than watch Lena in pain? Now do me a quick favor if you want more Mafia romance stories like this. Hit like, it tells YouTube to push this story to more romance readers. Subscribe, because I'm dropping more audiobooks and full stories, and you don't want to miss the next obsession. Comment, because I'm choosing the next book based on what you say. And here's your question for the comments. Who should we follow next? A. Sophia's revenge arc. She's humiliated, but she's not finished. B. Marco's forbidden love story. The consigliere always has secrets. C. A new heroine entering the Greco Empire. Fresh blood, fresh danger. Drop A, B, or C in the comments. And if you want to be extra, tell me the trope you crave next. Jealous ex, forced marriage, bodyguard romance, enemies to lovers, or secret baby. All right, my love, thank you for listening. Stay sharp, stay dangerous. Most of all, stay ruined, and I'll see you in the next story.